Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 21 Prediction. Lord Rimuru, who is this? Do you know him? Kajin, who was beside him, looked at Gulinshta's invitation and turned to Rimuru in surprise, because that position was indeed quite good. Oh, you mean him? He's my good friend and also the second in command of our village. Rimuru simply introduced him without explaining too much. Oh. Hearing Rimuru's answer, everyone understood that they really knew each other, and it was no wonder that Gulinshta would extend such an invitation. However, judging from Gulinshta's expression, he seemed to be a cold person, and everyone couldn't help but wonder why he would invite them to sit together. So you're Master Kajin. Gulinshta raised an eyebrow slightly, looked at the three dwarves with different statures behind them, and continued, when I was wandering around the dwarf kingdom, I heard about Master Kajin's superb skills, and I've also heard of the dwarf three brothers. After all, he was Master Kajin, and he still had to give him enough respect, and they would also become heroes in building the village in the future. Gulinshta stood up, smiled at the dwarves in front of him, and said a few words of praise, appearing a bit too familiar. As expected, these simple-minded dwarves couldn't resist such praise and immediately beamed with joy. No, we're just slightly famous, ha ha ha. Since you're Lord Rimuru's friend, let's celebrate together. May I ask what your friend's name is? Kajin and the others waved their hands, expressing a bit more goodwill towards Gulinshta. Just call me Gulinshta, Gulinshta said with a slight smile at the corner of his mouth. However, Gulinshta had already walked to Rimuru's side, carefully took him from the hands of the two charming elf ladies, and hugged him to the side, as if he had something important to say. Hey, don't disturb me from playing with the ladies, Gulinshta, what exactly do you want? Rimuru's little face was full of displeasure. Faced with Rimuru's complaints, Gulinshta ignored him, but leaned close to his ear and whispered softly. I know you can replicate gold coins, give me some, I'm penniless right now. Rimuru's eyes widened, looking at Gulinshta in disbelief, and muttered to himself. How dare this guy come to this kind of place without any money? In order to avoid being pestered by Gulinshta and to be able to return to the warm embrace of the ladies as soon as possible, Rimuru thought, it's just a little bit of gold coins, just give it to him. Alright, here you go. After saying that, Rimuru quickly handed the gold coins to Gulinshta, and then rushed back to the ladies' embrace like a bolt of lightning. Oh. A small impact made the elf lady exclaim in surprise, and the two masses of flesh in front of her chest swayed, not knowing if it was Rimuru's intention. Sigh, that Rimuru. Gulinshta simply couldn't bear to watch, but decided to ignore him for the sake of the gold coins Rimuru gave him. They quickly took their seats, picked up their wine glasses and clinked them together, welcoming each other, with lovely elf ladies accompanying them. Gulinshta divided the 20 gold coins among the two elf ladies who had been serving him just now. Haha, today is really thanks to Lord Rimuru. If you hadn't lent a hand, I definitely wouldn't have been able to complete that seemingly impossible task. Come, I must toast you a cup. Kajin said with a face full of gratitude, raising his wine glass to toast Rimuru. Rimuru did not decline and readily drank the wine in his glass in one gulp. However, the pity was that he couldn't taste the flavor in it. Sometimes, he really envied Gulinshta for being able to taste the wonderfulness of fine wine. Just then, a female elf's voice came. Hello, Rimuru, would you like to come over here? I can give you. What? Could it be what he imagined? No, I'm just a simple slime. Unfortunately, the reality was not as he wished. It turned out that the other party was saying whether he wanted to use the magic crystal ball to make a prophecy, to see the person destined for him. Rimuru became very interested in this and said that he wanted to try it. Alright, Rimuru, just place your hand above the crystal ball. The female elf guided him. Understood. Rimuru excitedly did as he was told. Gulinshta's hand, which was originally tightly holding the wine glass, paused slightly, and he pondered in his heart. Is it coming? The person destined for Rimuru. Although he already knew it, he chose to remain silent, only drinking his wine silently without saying a word. Rimuru put his hand on the crystal ball, and it emitted a faint light. A blurry picture began to appear on the crystal ball. Rimuru looked at the crystal ball a little nervously, and the surface gradually became clearer, showing a girl with a beautiful face who looked a little lost. Haha, it's a very good-looking girl. Lord Rimuru. Kajin joked with Rimuru, because prophecies and the like were just for fun to them. Gulinshta, do you want to try it? I suddenly want to see it. As soon as Rimuru saw the girl in the picture, his heart was touched, as if there was some kind of connection of fate. Could this girl really be the person destined for him? Me. Gulinshta was a little surprised that Rimuru would say that. You can try it, I'm also a little curious about what destiny is. Gulinshta imitated Rimuru's previous actions, and everyone curiously watched. At first, the crystal ball was just a blur, and gradually there was a little sense of the picture, showing a scene of ice and snow. Gulinshta stared at this scene, and the picture began to become clear, showing a lonely and arrogant figure. Just the back view made people feel a cold and domineering aura, and behind him stood 12 blurred figures. The picture ended here, and the crystal ball shattered with a crack. Ah! The elf who made the magic prediction exclaimed in surprise. They hadn't even seen what it was yet. Why did it break? Everyone was extremely disappointed, and Rimuru only saw a little bit. You can't completely believe in magic predictions. The main thing is that it depends on human effort. Come, let's continue drinking. Gulinshta said to everyone as a form of comfort. Gulinshta is right, it depends on human effort. Come, let's continue toasting, let's toast happily. Kajin stood up with a whoop and shouted to everyone, his face flushed from drinking. Come, cheers. They seemed not to care at all and continued their celebration, and this matter passed without leaving a trace. Chapter 22 Besta Minister. HMPH, when did even such low-level monsters get to come to a place like this? How unlucky. Just then, a voice full of contempt and disdain suddenly rang out, making people feel very uncomfortable. Rimuru looked around, feeling puzzled. Are they talking about me? After all, at this moment, it seemed that only he was a monster regarded as a low-level creature, and everyone else's eyes turned to the person who had suddenly spoken. Oh, isn't that Lord Kaijin? Have you completed the task you promised before? How can you have the leisure to come to a nightclub to have fun? The man continued, the sarcasm in his tone becoming more and more obvious. If you don't complete the assigned task by then, don't blame me for not considering old times. His words were still sharp and mean, making them unbearable. Hearing these words, Kaijin's face also became very ugly. You bastard. HMPH, I'm telling you, I've already completed the task, I don't need you to worry about it. Kaijin glared at the other party, responding without showing any weakness. Obviously, Kaijin didn't have a good look for the person in front of him either, it could even be said that he was full of hostility. What? How is that possible? That person looked shocked, seemingly unable to believe what Kaijin had said. He had come to make trouble this time, so he turned his attention to another target. Madam Boss, when did the shop start letting in such low-level monsters? Ignoring everyone else, he instead turned his attention to Rimuru, a look of deep disgust on his face. But, Minister Besta, if it's a slime, it should be. The Madam Boss also wanted to explain. Geez, is it necessary to make such a personal attack? What did the slime ever do to you? Rimuru muttered to himself, feeling very helpless. To make matters worse, Besta actually poured a full glass of wine directly on Rimuru, a sudden act that stunned everyone present. The originally noisy and chaotic scene instantly became silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. At this moment, Rimuru thought to himself. No, I absolutely can't get angry. I must endure it. This hateful guy is a noble, if I kill him now, not only will I be in big trouble, but I'm afraid even Granstar will be implicated, and we'll all have a hard time returning to the village. What's going on? Why do I suddenly feel so cold? This is really strange. Besta's body suddenly trembled uncontrollably, and at the same time, the surrounding temperature began to drop sharply, as if he were in a huge ice cave, chilling to the bone. Rimuru keenly noticed the abnormal situation, but he didn't act rashly. Instead, he immediately stopped Granstar from doing anything with his eyes. After receiving Rimuru's frantically implied look, although reluctant, Granstar heavily placed the glass in his hand back on the table. Only then did everyone realize that the liquid in the glass had already frozen into ice, crystal clear and emitting a trace of cold air. Hey, what are you doing? Kaijin shouted directly, kicking over the table and standing up, glaring at Besta with wide eyes. Besta, you bastard, how dare you do such a thing to my guest? You're simply going too far. Kaijin's voice was full of anger, making people tremble. Wait a minute, Kaijin, the other party is a minister, don't be so impulsive. Rimuru quickly spoke to dissuade him, secretly lamenting in his heart. He had just managed to persuade a cold-tempered master, but unexpectedly, another more violent character had emerged in the blink of an eye. This made him feel very helpless, he was simply wasting his effort. At this moment, Rimuru really felt like just chopping down this arrogant and rude noble and then escaping this country with everyone. Did I just endure all that for nothing? However, reality did not allow him to do so. After all, they were in a foreign land. If they really caused big trouble, the consequences would be unimaginable. Just then, in Minister Besta's surprised eyes, a huge fist struck straight at his face like lightning. Bang! With a dull thud, Minister Besta was heavily knocked to the ground. Ah, that hurts. Kaijin, how dare you hit a noble? Do you know what kind of crime this is? Besta painfully covered his cheek, lying on the ground, looking at Kaijin in disbelief, his eyes full of shock and incomprehension. However, Kaijin ignored the embarrassed Besta lying on the ground and instead turned his attention to Rimuru and the others. His eyes were firm and sharp, as if telling Besta that he would never tolerate anyone bullying his friends. Granstar and Lord Rimuru, are you two looking for craftsmen with outstanding skills? If so, then see if I meet your requirements. What? Rimuru wondered if his ears were playing tricks on him. However, he quickly realized that Kaijin would have a hard time staying in this country after punching that noble, right? Kaijin, a master craftsman like you is very welcome in our village. Granstar was the first to respond. Yes, Kaijin, I've been waiting for you to say that. Rimuru chimed in, expressing his agreement. Although punching the minister felt good, trouble followed. When Kate arrived with the dwarf guard, he was also stunned by the scene before him. He looked at his still angry older brother Kaijin with a complicated expression. Big brother, what have you done? His duty was to maintain the order of the kingdom and arrest criminals who violated the law. You should know that publicly assaulting a noble is a serious crime, and this matter may even alarm their king. This was no joke. HMPH. That idiot over there dared to do such a rude thing to Lord Rimuru. I just couldn't stand it and taught him a little lesson. Standing amidst the wreckage, Kaijin still replied angrily. As for Minister Besta, not only was his nose bleeding, but he was also glaring at them with resentment. Hey, even if you're teaching someone a lesson, at least look at the target first. Cade sighed and muttered softly. In any case, under the current circumstances, I can only detain you. Cade said helplessly and began to issue relevant orders to his subordinates. Chapter 23 King Gazel. Don't worry, I'll take off your shackles when we get back later. Kader whispered in a voice only they could hear. Alas. Limuru became dejected. Looks like he'll be stuck in jail for a few more days. What a drag. A member of the guard came in front of Gulansuda and was about to put handcuffs on him. Gulansuda frowned slightly. This person is not with us. This matter has nothing to do with him. Kegan suddenly said to Kader, apparently wanting to involve one less person. That's right, this lord is a distinguished guest of our store. Please be lenient. The female elf in the store also spoke. Kader looked at Gulansuda with some surprise. Who is this guy? Even the elves are pleading for him. Big brother, I understand. He still has to give his big brother face. It's just arresting one less irrelevant person, he still has that authority. After the guards handcuffed Limuru and the other four, they were about to take them away, but Kader turned his head again just as they left the store. He stared intently at Gulansuda, looking him up and down. Captain, what are you doing? Hurry up and take the people back and finish the job. It's nothing, I just think that elf looks familiar, like I've seen him somewhere before. Kader thought hard, but couldn't remember. He had too many things to deal with every day, and he had seen too many people. Are you talking about the male elf? Captain, don't worry about it. Isn't there enough going on today? The subordinate dwarf was even more thick-headed and didn't even bother to think about it. Forget it. It's probably just a small matter. Let's take Big Brother and the others back. Kader shook his head and sighed. He probably thought of something, but didn't say it. As he said, it was just a small matter, and besides, that person was a friend of his big brother, so there was no need to make things difficult. Gulansuda watched Limuru being taken away, his eyes flashing with uncertain light. My lord, is that Mr. Limuru really your friend? A female elf pressed her body against Gulansuda's. Perhaps because she was an elf, Gulansuda didn't mind. Yes, Eve, don't underestimate Limuru. His strength is still very strong, but his personality is that of a good old man. Gulansuda's evaluation of Limuru was very pertinent. The female elf named Eve covered her small mouth with a look of surprise. A slime with great strength. By the way, our landlady told me that she wants to introduce you to our elf queen. She asked me to ask you about it. Eve tiptoed, her mouth just reaching Gulansuda's ear as she said playfully. The elf queen. Gulansuda pondered for a while. How could he not know what kind of person the elf queen was? He might as well forget about introductions. Go back and tell Madame Ricina that I will have the opportunity to meet the legendary elf queen. Now is not the time. Gulansuda still rejected Madame Risina's kindness. Oh, is that so? Eve said with disappointment. She actually had an inexplicable good feeling about this male elf who appeared, especially when standing next to him. The magic power in her body would fluctuate for a while. Gulansuda ignored the female elf who was pestering him, but asked a question. Eve, do you know where that Minister Besta lives? I know, but what are you going to do? In prison. This is too much, Lord Limuru, you haven't taken me there yet. Gabuta, who was hanging in the prison cell by Limuru, shouted aggrievedly. Shut up, Gabuta. Limuru was also very annoyed. This was the second time he had been in jail today, and he had to watch this unlucky guy, Gabuta. Alas, it's all my fault for implicating you, Lord Limuru. Kegan also apologized to the others for being implicated by his impulsiveness. Brother Kegan, don't blame yourself. That Besta has been targeting us more than once or twice. The dwarf brothers comforted Kegan. That's right, blame that Besta, he's too hateful. Limuru said that he had never seen such a hateful person. Don't say that. Besta may have become like this because of me. After all, he used to be my subordinate. It turned out that Kegan was once the captain of the working unit of one of the 7 kingdoms, knights. At that time, Besta was his adjutant, and it was then that an incident about the magic soldier occurred. In the end, he was framed by Besta and took full responsibility for the failure, and was forced to resign from the position of captain. Thus came the day of judgment. For so many years, few people have dared to violate the laws set by the king. This matter even alarmed their king to be present to hear the verdict. Limuru and the others were re-shackled and led into the royal palace's judgment hall by a team of dwarf soldiers. Limuru curiously looked around, and then looked up to see the king sitting above. The person he least wanted to see in this kingdom was this person. After all, he was here to poach people, and he was a little flustered. That king's magic aura is so strong. In this way, he was still preparing to take Kegan and his party to escape. I'm afraid it will be difficult to escape. Is this the oppressive feeling from the hero King Gazel Dwargo? Limuru's heart was frantically warning him. The threat this person brought to him was too strong. A man wearing a judge's robe was kneeling at the king's feet, holding a code in his hands. He stood up and announced loudly. Now begin the judgment. Limuru and the others had no right to speak at all. They were not allowed to speak during the trial and could only entrust a representative to defend them. What kind of ghost judgment is this? There is no fairness at all. Now it's the victim's turn to enter and speak. Limuru saw Besta walking in with a limp. Everyone's eyes strangely fell on Besta. Kegan and the others also exchanged strange glances. He seemed to have only punched him once last night. Besta was so cruel to himself in order to frame them. Admire, admire. Seeing everyone's eyes looking at him, Besta almost burst into tears. He was originally going to wrap some bandages yesterday to pretend to be miserable. Unexpectedly, a small blue thing suddenly flew in last night. That's right, he hadn't even seen what this little thing was. It came up and pressed him to the ground and beat him up. What was too much was that his mouth was also frozen, and he couldn't make a single miserable cry. The little thing might not have enjoyed the beating enough, so it pointed its little hand at his arm. Instantly, Besta's entire right arm was frozen, and then it clapped its hands and flew away cheekily. Now that's good, he doesn't have to pretend to be injured, and he doesn't have to deliberately pretend to be miserable. Chapter 24 The King's Judgment. Your Majesty, you must be the judge for me. Your humble servant almost couldn't see your great figure anymore. In broad daylight, they actually hired someone to kill and beat me like this. You must punish them severely. As soon as Besta saw King Gazel sitting quietly on the high seat, he immediately knelt on the ground and pointed towards Rimuru. Hey, hey, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. What do you mean, hired someone to kill? They've been staying in prison these days, eating and drinking well. They haven't done anything like that. King Gazel on the throne opened his eyes and looked down when he heard Besta's howl. He saw Besta with one arm covered in bandages, one leg limping, and his face bruised and swollen, making it difficult to recognize him. Gazel's mouth twitched slightly, and he silently closed his eyes again. Kagan and the 3 dwarf brothers all stared wide-eyed at Besta, their hearts filled with anger. This sinister and cunning fellow is once again distorting the facts and stirring up trouble in front of the king. If it weren't for the strict rules, that speaking without the king's permission during the trial would be considered disrespectful to the king and punishable by immediate execution. They probably wouldn't have been able to restrain their inner impulses and would have pointed at Besta's nose and cursed him. However, Rimuru appeared unusually calm, observing Besta's every move with composure. Just now, he had keenly noticed a small patch of purple skin peeking out from Besta's bandaged arm. Without a doubt, it was clearly a mark left by frostbite. At this moment, the judge finally spoke, his voice loud and forceful. Marquis Besta, according to your accusation, Kagan and others hired someone to attack a nobleman. However, we have already verified that Kagan and others have been imprisoned these days and have not had contact with anyone else. Therefore, your accusation cannot stand. Hearing this, Besta's face turned extremely ugly. Although he was unwilling, he couldn't subject Kagan to the death penalty due to a lack of conclusive evidence. But, it is a fact that Kagan attacked a nobleman. The subsequent trial proceeded as in the original story. The person defending Rimuru had long been bribed by Beta, directly exaggerating and admitting to Kagan and others' crimes. My king, have you heard? Please severely punish these criminals. Besta couldn't wait to advise the king. He even arrogantly revealed a smug smile towards Rimuru's side. That bastard. Just as the judge was about to announce the verdict, suddenly, a rough voice rang out, breaking the tense atmosphere of the scene. Everyone looked around, and it turned out that their king was speaking at this moment. The entire scene instantly became silent. Kagan, it's been a long time. Gazel's voice revealed a hint of cordiality and emotion. I remember you opened a blacksmith shop in the kingdom, didn't you? How did you get involved in something like this? King Gazel asked in a slightly teasing tone. However, Kagan hadn't yet regained his senses and realized that the king was questioning him. After a while, he responded as if waking from a dream. Your Majesty, thank you for your concern. Alas, to be honest, I never thought I would meet you in this way. Gazel, whose face was usually stern and serious, actually showed a rare smile, and he continued to speak to Kagan nonchalantly. Kagan, I clearly remember that it has been several years since you left my side. Back then, you had just joined my army, with a face full of youth and innocence. I didn't expect time to fly by so quickly, and so much time has passed. Yes, so many years have passed. I never expected that your Majesty would still remember what happened back then. A touch of emotion flashed in Kagan's eyes, and he couldn't help but recall the years when he fought alongside King Gazel. Kagan's voice was a little choked up, and tears involuntarily rolled down the corners of his eyes. At this time, the people in the hall tacitly fell silent, leaving the scene to the two of them, the king and his subject. You once told me that you didn't quite like living under my absolute justice. Do you ever regret it now? King Gazel's face froze slightly as he asked Kagan below. Kagan wiped the corners of his eyes and then looked directly at King Gazel. To be honest, not being able to continue standing behind you is indeed quite regrettable. Gazel was also moved by Kagan's words, staring intently at the person kneeling on the ground below. Kagan, I can give you a chance to come back to my side. I can restore your position as commander of the legion. Upon hearing the king's words, all the dwarves present were moved. Your Majesty, you can't do that. Kagan is just a prisoner now. Besta completely lost his composure upon hearing King Gazel's words. I went to so much trouble to remove this eyesore, and now the king is saying that we can pretend nothing happened. Isn't this a joke? He also knows that King Gazel has this power. King Gazel waved his hand, ignoring what the minister Besta wanted to say. However, Kagan's next words shocked the jaws of those around him, and a look of ecstasy returned to Besta's face. My king, if I were to choose again, I would still leave you, and this time I might not listen to your orders anymore. Besta then pointed at Kagan and others and shouted again. Bold, you criminal, I granted you such a great favor, yet you dare refuse. I think you should be sentenced to death. King Gazel's face was a little surprised. Oh, Kagan, why is that? Give me a reason. Kagan still had that respectful expression on his face, speaking calmly to King Gazel sitting above. Because I have already found the master I will follow from now on. Kagan then turned his gaze to Rimuru next to him. Rimuru was also shocked at this moment. Kagan, you. King Gazel then looked at the slime below, and Rimuru fearlessly met the king's gaze. After a long time, King Gazel gradually withdrew his gaze and sighed. So that's how it is. After another sigh, a gleam of light flashed in King Gazel's eyes again. Then let me end this trial. I now announce that Kagan and others are banished from the country and are not allowed to enter the dwarf kingdom without my order. Yes. The surrounding soldiers knelt down and responded to their king's order. That's not right. This time, Besta was really confused. The soldiers led Rimuru and others out of the palace, following the king's order to banish them. After everyone had left, Besta, do you have anything you want to say to me? King Gazel said lightly to Besta below, who still had a face full of resentment. Chapter 25 Collision. Your Majesty. Bester knelt on the ground, his face gloomy. This subject does not understand. Has there been some misunderstanding? Why? In contrast, King Gazel remained expressionless. Misunderstanding. I have lost a loyal subject. What do you mean? That fellow never swore loyalty to your Majesty, and even followed those of unknown origin. Bester, you misunderstand completely. Kagan intended to leave me anyway. The loyal subject I speak of, is you. Bester's heart pounded violently. Me, yet his thoughts were in knots, and his words became jumbled. What did His Majesty just say? Lost you, meaning, Bester was somewhat at a loss. I ask you once more. My subject Bester, do you have anything to say to me? Fear surged like a tide. Bester's mind was filled with fear. Your Majesty, please forgive my foolishness. Bester hesitated for a long time before squeezing out these words. I had high hopes for you, so I have been waiting. Whether it was the magic armor incident or this time, I have been waiting for you to tell me the truth yourself. King Gazel spoke each word calmly, but each word pierced Bester's heart. So the king already knew. How laughable. But you. With the last words, Bester collapsed to the ground. Take a look at this. Bester looked at the king vacantly, not knowing why he asked. The guards had brought in 2 items from somewhere. The other was an exquisite bottle containing a multicolored liquid. Bester, do you know what these are? Guards, explain them to him. Receiving King Gazel's order, the guards began to explain. Bester was a researcher, and he quickly understood what these 2 items were. It was a high-grade recovery potion with a 100% extraction rate. Even with all their dwarves' technology, they could only achieve 98%. The second item shocked Bester even more. With their technology, they only knew that this potion contained an herb called fibercut. But the effect of this potion was simply heaven-defying. Simultaneous recovery of magic power and life force. What a concept. If it could be mass-produced, their powerful army would always be at peak combat strength and would not tire. These 2 technologies were enough to become the core of a nation and could be elevated to the highest military reserves. These 2 items were given by that Rimuru and one of his friends. But you caused us to sever contact with them. Do you have anything else to say? At this moment, he realized why the king confronted him now. He had made an irreparable mistake. I have no words. I have failed your Majesty. Tears fell silently. Bester knew that he had been abandoned by the king. He only wanted to dedicate himself to the king and gain his approval. What he hoped for was so simple. However, he had lost his way at some point. Could it have started from the moment he became jealous of Kagan? I understand. Then, Bester, from this day forward, I forbid you from stepping into the palace. Do not appear before me again. Bester slowly stood up and bowed deeply to his king. He left just like that, leaving behind a lonely figure. After Bester left, a black shadow slowly appeared before King Gazel and knelt down. Your Majesty, should we continue to monitor Rimuru and the others? Is it really all right to let such powerful monsters leave? After the person who appeared finished speaking, she lowered her head and silently waited for King Gazel's response. But after waiting for a long time without any response, she raised her head in confusion. She saw King Gazel staring intently behind her. She suddenly turned her head but saw nothing behind her. She looked at King Gazel strangely. Your Excellency, you have been following my subordinate for so long. Are you not going to show yourself? At this moment, King Gazel finally spoke, and waves of magic power spread out. The shadow subordinate, upon hearing the king's words, immediately jumped up from the ground and stood in front of King Gazel, looking ahead in shock. The surrounding soldiers nervously drew their weapons, each showing a vigilant expression. As expected of the hero king, Granstar's blue-robed figure appeared from the previously empty space, floating in midair. It's you. How could you? The shadow looked in shock at the handsome elf floating in the air. Wasn't that Granstar, whom she had lost track of before? She was simply ashamed to face her king. As the king's shadow, she had actually been followed and brought before the king. Granstar had not expected the hero king's perception to be so sharp. He had used 3 skills: magic power, concealment, heat nullification, and disguise. But upon approaching the hero king, he was still discovered. He had indeed come here by following this shadow all the way. Granstar was also curious about this shadow who had followed him before. He hadn't expected that after the shadow lost track of him, it would ding on Rimuru and had been monitoring Rimuru's every move for the past few days. So Granstar had been following this shadow all along. After that, he came to the palace. He had also witnessed the previous trial. However, he was not worried about Rimuru's safety. The result of the trial was similar to what he had expected. Gazel was a qualified king. Granstar landed on the ground from midair, showing respect to the Hero King. Then, he looked directly at the king. Respected Hero King, I am here only because I am worried about my friend. I have no malice. Please withdraw your surveillance of my friend. Granstar spoke politely to the Hero King. Oh, that slime is your friend. You are both from the Jura forest. Gazel asked as if to confirm. Yes. Granstar nodded, not denying anything. I really didn't expect that after the aura of the storm dragon Veldora disappeared, two such terrifying monsters would appear in the Jura forest. What do you think, Your Excellency? Gazel put his hands together, propping up his chin, and stared at Granstar with interest. His majestic face was very oppressive. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Granstar thought to himself. I really didn't expect King Gazel to be able to roughly deduce their origins with just these clues. It seems this king is not simple in terms of intelligence. However, he must be limited to guessing, otherwise, why would he say it so easily? Perhaps even he himself can hardly believe it. Hero King, I won't bother you with the tranquility of the palace any longer. To be honest, I'm really worried about the current situation of my friend. Limulu should have reached the city gate by now. Granstar is just looking for an excuse to get away. After Granstar finished speaking, he placed his hand on his chest, made a gesture of bowing and taking his leave, and then turned to leave. Hold on. King Gazel suddenly roared in anger, his face extremely gloomy, as if an oppressive force was about to come. The surrounding guards were also well trained, and instantly surrounded Granstar, the spears in their hands pointing straight at him. The atmosphere on the scene suddenly became extremely tense. Alas, it's not that easy to get away, Granstar couldn't help but secretly complain in his heart. Hero King, could it be that you still want to treat me to a meal? Why are you stopping me from leaving? Granstar looked at the tense atmosphere around him and was still in the mood to joke. King Gazel couldn't help but be speechless after hearing Granstar's words, still thinking about having a meal. You fellow, dare to be rude in front of the king. Shadow didn't expect this guy to be in the mood to joke in front of the king, his face calmly staring at the king. Alright, let's talk about you now. I recently heard reports from my subordinates that a male elf has committed 2 crimes in my country these days. This male elf with the titles of Succubus who disrupts public order and Monster Stealer who descended from the sky is you, isn't it? If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, maybe you really will get a feast. This last sentence seemed to be directed at Granstar. King Gazel stared at Granstar with great interest. Speaking of which, are the things he's done these days so famous? And what are these 2 titles? Granstar's face darkened after hearing this. If you can't come up with nicknames, don't make them up randomly, these dwarves really. I did indeed steal a monster from a subjugation team, but I remember already giving some compensation. As for the charge of disrupting public order, it's simply slander. Granstar's tone was still the same calm one. King Gazel is definitely the kind of person who latches onto small things and doesn't let go. Things probably aren't that simple. Sure enough, King Gazel's topic suddenly changed, and his tone became somewhat sincere. I can clearly sense that you contain extremely powerful magic within your body. That level of terror is something even I must take seriously. Even among my many subordinates, including those powerful legions, I'm afraid no one can defeat you. At this moment, King Gazel's face showed an expression of deep interest in Granstar. For someone with such outstanding strength like you to choose to stay in a place like the Jura forest, it's really too much of a waste of talent. Come to my side. King Gazel did not hide his appreciation and desire for Granstar, and directly extended an invitation to him. Following that, King Gazel said something even more shocking. And the Flying Knight Order directly under my command will also be handed over to you to lead. How about it? When King Gazel said this, the surrounding soldiers were all greatly shocked. Your Majesty, how can you? Even Shadow didn't expect his king to do this. They never expected that their king would take the initiative to invite this stranger of unknown origin to join, and hand over such an important and powerful army as the Flying Knight Order to him to lead. You must know that the Flying Knight Order is the king's most elite and powerful force, and its members all possess B-level strength or above. However, the reason why King Gazel made such a decision was not only because he valued Granstar's personal strength. In fact, there were two other key factors influencing his decision. One reason is that Granstar comes from the Jura forest, and the importance of this place is self-evident. Since the storm dragon Veldora disappeared, various countries have been coveting and eyeing this place. If the situation requires it in the future, he can use Granstar as an excuse to openly occupy the Jura forest. The other is Granstar's identity as an elf. Compared to other magical beasts, he has more affection for elves. After all, the dwarves can be considered half-elves. Granstar's handsome face was full of surprise, looking at the hand extended by the Hero King. Could this be an invitation for him to join the Dwarven armed kingdom? How could this be possible? Even though he coveted that powerful army with the entire Pegasus Legion. Hero King, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I have always pursued freedom and unrestraint. And I once made a vow to only live the life I want. Therefore, Hero King, I will not submit to anyone. Granstar refused without even thinking. Although the conditions offered by King Gazel were very tempting, isn't it better to stay by Lemuru's side? Is that so? King Gazel was really a little disappointed this time, and withdrew his outstretched hand. He stood up steadily from the throne, actually like a awakened beast. King Gazel wore a close-fitting armor, and his body was the standard dwarf build. If that's the case, this elf, I may have to test your strength. King Gazel's eyes burst out with a sharp light, and a terrifying magic power pressed towards Granstar. Granstar's blue ice-colored pupils shrank slightly upon hearing these words. He did not expect the Hero King to personally take action, completely developing in an unpredictable direction. Granstar felt the magic pressure of King Gazel, and also unyieldingly released his own magic aura completely. The palace was immediately divided by two terrifying magical forces, one black and majestic, and the other ice-blue, giving people a feeling of coldness and domineering. The two magical auras collided together. The surrounding dwarven soldiers were unable to breathe under the pressure of this magical aura. This was just a probing attack from the two of them. These two monsters. Shadow also did not expect Granstar's magic power to be able to collide with his king's without falling behind. Chapter 28, Battle with the King. The buildings in the palace were rickety and creaking, seeming as if they could collapse at any moment under the pressure. This was the terrifying magical pressure released by a demon lord-level powerhouse. If a fierce battle with Gulista were to break out here, I'm afraid the royal palace would be unable to escape unscathed. At that time, how could King Gazel's dignity and prestige be preserved? Gulista muttered to himself, was this Hero King really planning to get serious? Hiss, ning. Suddenly, an ear-piercing roar of a magical beast entered Gulista's ears. He curiously raised his head, his gaze following the direction from which the sound came. With his powerful magic perception, an A+ level magical beast was approaching at an extremely fast speed. This magical beast landed on the ground, vibrating its wings slightly, and then slowly walked to King Gazel's side. Gulista stared curiously at this peculiar Pegasus mount. He had never seen such a magical creature before. This magical beast had a majestic and imposing appearance, no less impressive than Rimuru's Ranga. Its lithe figure and fierce aura couldn't help but captivate people. This was the legendary winged dragon that had accompanied the Hero King in battle for many years, rumored to be mixed with a trace of dragon blood. Gazel gently stroked his mount, flipped over and rode on its back, soaring into the sky. Follow me. He left behind a voice. Gulista, who originally had an aerial advantage, was stunned for a moment, and after hesitating, followed. Waving his wings, he transformed into a blue light and chased after him at high speed. Two black and blue lights chased one after another in the sky within the territory of the Valijan armed kingdom. Wow, look up there, what is that? Look, isn't that our king, King Gazel? Then who is the person behind him? The dwarves in the city below were in an uproar, their king was fighting with someone else. Gazel looked at Gulista chasing closely behind him, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Elf, please tell me your true name. Gulista increased his speed by a few points, getting closer to Gazel. Gulista Tempest. A faint, concise sentence. Good. Now, let the battle begin. Gulista was slightly stunned. What? Start now. In the sky. Taking advantage of Gulista's moment of Leng Xian, Gazel, riding the Pegasus, flashed and came behind him, a giant sword slashing down towards him. Ambushing. Gulista condensed an ice wall behind him, reducing the power of the giant sword. Covering his hand with a layer of ice crystal-colored armor enhancement, he barely caught Gazel's slash. Clang, ding, ding, ding ding. For a time, sparks flew between them, his magic perception could only barely perceive the trajectory of the giant sword. Ice armor, ice thorns skills were constantly released. Both sides' magic power was constantly being consumed. From afar, one could see dazzling magic collisions erupting in the sky above the kingdom. I didn't expect that as a king, you would still resort to ambushes. Have you disregarded your reputation? Gazel. Gulista's hands didn't stop moving, but his face was full of anger. He never expected that the dignified hero king would actually resort to ambushes. If he had reacted a little slower, he was afraid that the sword in Gazel's hand would have cut his current body in two. Haha, who would care about ambushes on the battlefield? Besides, who can see clearly at this height? Gazel laughed instead. The power of the giant sword in his hand increased by several points. The ice magic in front of him was of no use to him under his powerful attacks. There's even a reason for ambushing, but the dwarves on the ground can't see clearly that their king is relying on high-speed movement to dare to ambush. In close combat, Gulista was no match for Gazel at all. Gazel suddenly realized that the speed of his hand was gradually slowing down, and he saw a piece of frost spreading all over his body. Gulista's eyes narrowed slightly, his frost erosion characteristic was activated. This was a good opportunity. He moved his body and created distance between himself and Gazel. Oh, is it a characteristic with an erosion type effect? Interesting. A cyan light flashed across Gazel's body, the effect of frost erosion was negated, and he moved his wrist slightly. He turned his gaze to Gulista in the distance, who had a wary look, and laughed heartily. Unfortunately, your combat awareness is still a little too poor. Gulista didn't deny Gazel's words. He knew that since he reincarnated into this world, he had always relied on his overwhelming strength to instantly kill his opponents. For him, there was no such thing as combat awareness. Fortunately, relying on his racial advantages, he was very strong in terms of magic control. This was the first time he had faced Gazel, who had the strength of an awakened demon lord, and the pressure was very high. Combat awareness. It seems that I still have many things to learn. Gulista muttered to himself. He couldn't help but think of an old white-haired swordsman in his mind. But now, he couldn't allow himself to think too much. He still had to face Gazel's powerful attacks. Extreme cold domain. The temperature of the surrounding space reached below zero, and the water mist in the sky turned into ice particles. Don't forget, he was an elf magician. Magic was his forte. Wait, Gulista. Don't release that ice giant of yours. If this skill is released, the people under my feet will probably suffer. Gazel hurriedly called a stop to Gulista, even stopping his attacks. Releasing the ice giant in the sky would probably cause a huge hailstorm to fall on the city below. Gulista looked at Gazel in shock. How could he know the skill he was going to release next? Gazel raised his long sword, but instead laughed heartily. Yes, don't you know that our dwarf king has the innate skill, mind reading? Haha, I rarely used this ability before when facing weak enemies. As long as you don't use the ice giant skill, anything else is fine. After saying that, he impolitely raised his sword and charged towards Gulista's direction. Gulista's face darkened. So you only used it after I couldn't use it. All of his skills had long been discerned by this guy. No wonder he had always been one step ahead just now. Master, is there a way to block the effects of mind reading? Report. With the current host's ability, it is not possible to do so. It will only be possible after reaching the awakened demon lord level. With his current strength, he couldn't do it. Gulista retracted his mind and looked angrily at Gazel's lightning-like strike. Isn't it just mind reading? Watch my ice burst. Facing this strike, Gulista directly released a range-type attack magic. The ice particles surrounding Gazel exploded directly. Boom. Chapter 29. Stop. This range of ice blast power is simply unimaginable. Even a powerful being like Gazel would never dare to risk directly confronting this terrifying attack. Helpless, he had no choice but to temporarily abandon the idea of charging forward, and instead focused his energy on casting various defensive skills. Open black lens bracket earth power close black lens bracket open black lens bracket steel blockade close black lens bracket. As a series of deep voices sounded, layers of solid shields appeared around Gazel, but even so, he could still feel the immense pressure brought by the ice blast power. Finally, after the immense residual power of the ice blast dissipated, Gazel was able to breathe a slight sigh of relief. At this moment, he sat quietly on the back of the twin-winged flying dragon, his body trembling slightly. Obviously the defense just now had consumed a great deal of his strength. Hiss, Nightingale. The twin-winged flying dragon let out a painful hiss, seemingly also feeling lingering fear for the thrilling scene it had just experienced. Meanwhile, in the city below, dwarves and people of other races looked up at this scene in the sky. Unfortunately, the distance was too far. They could only see some blurry figures, unable to clearly see this thrilling battle. At the same time, the originally clear sky suddenly became gloomy, and countless ice shards began to flutter down. These ice shards were also mixed with some blood-streaked blue ice blocks, as if a sudden blizzard swept through the entire city. Meanwhile, Rimuru, who was far away at the city gate happily reuniting with Ranga and the others, suddenly seemed to sense something, and abruptly turned his head back, his eyes fixed on the sky above the kingdom. In his magical power perception, two incredibly powerful magical powers were colliding fiercely in the distant high sky. One of the magical powers felt somewhat familiar to Rimuru. It was a kind of cold and overbearing aura. Rimuru's heart sank, and he immediately realized that Granstar was fighting someone. Judging from the magical power fluctuations, the opponent's strength was quite powerful, even a bit outrageous. He didn't hesitate to make a decision. He had to rush to the scene immediately to support Granstar. Ranga, quick, come with me. As Rimuru spoke, his figure flashed and he sped off in the direction of the magical power collision. Ranga did not hesitate at all, and closely followed Rimuru. At the same time, Rimuru turned his head and shouted to Gobta. Gobta, you take Kaijin and the others back to the village first, remember to safely escort them to the village. Yes, rest assured, Gobta replied respectfully. Don't worry, Lord Rimuru. Kaijin and the others also expressed that they would act according to Lord Rimuru's instructions. Although they didn't know what had happened, seeing Rimuru's nervous expression, they knew that something major must have occurred. And what could make Lord Rimuru so worried was probably only Lord Granstar. Cough cough. The close-fitting iron armor on Gazel's body was already tattered, revealing his bronze skin. Streaks of blood, cut by ice blades, crisscrossed, looking a bit ferocious. Haha, Granstar, your strength hasn't disappointed me, then it's time for me to get a little serious. Gazel looked down at his wounds. He didn't even remember how many years it had been since he had been injured. This long-lost feeling, on the contrary, made him laugh. You monster. Granstar's mood was not as relaxed and happy as Gazel's. Ice Burst was one of his strongest attack magics, but it had only caused Gazel a little minor injury. What else could this guy be if not a monster? When he heard that Gazel was finally going to get serious, Granstar's face became even more solemn. He opened his magical power perception to the maximum, because he knew very well that Gazel definitely possessed the strength of an awakened demon lord. He could clearly feel that the magic power of the king on the opposite side was as vast as the sea, and once angered, it would be as turbulent and surging as a monstrous wave. Gazel covered his body with a layer of magical power armor, and the giant sword in his hand emitted wisps of black lightning. Open black lens bracket thunder strike close black lens bracket activated. Granstar, you must be careful, this strike is very strong. After launching this strike, Gazel did not forget to remind Granstar. Obviously he was very confident in his skill. Granstar's face was still as cold and handsome as ever, facing the sword that was emitting terrifying lightning. He was not frightened, and calmly thought about how to face this strike. Open black lens bracket ice armor close black lens bracket completely covers. Granstar still gave himself a layer of defense first, but defense alone was definitely not enough. Open black lens bracket frost breath close black lens bracket. A blue magic circle several meters high appeared in front of Granstar, and the lit magic circle directly burst out a huge frost shock. Boom, bang. It collided fiercely with Gazel, who was holding a giant sword and riding a Pegasus. The attack of open black lens bracket thunder strike close black lens bracket did not stop, and passed through the extreme frost. Gazel, whose beard was dyed white by frost, held the giant sword and slashed at Granstar, and continued to launch open black lens bracket thunder strike close black lens bracket after getting close. Granstar only knew how terrifying the power was when he faced this strike at close range. Can he block this strike with defense? Warning, the host's body damage is 10%, open black lens bracket self-regeneration close black lens bracket characteristic activated. Body recovery 90%, 95%, 99%. The imagined pain did not come, thanks to the open black lens bracket pain immunity close black lens bracket characteristic. If Granstar hadn't made that response just now, I'm afraid the body damage wouldn't have been so little. Strange. Gazel's expression was a bit surprised. He had clearly already slashed, but why didn't he feel anything? The most important thing was that Granstar had disappeared at the last moment. He remembered that under his mind reading, Granstar didn't seem to have any teleportation skills. That's not right. Gazel turned his head back and looked at Granstar's current appearance, his pupils shrank slightly. He had become smaller, how could he be like the Queen of the Elves? Simply unbelievable. Then Gazel's expression became meaningful. It turned out that Granstar had turned into AQ version at the critical moment just now, so he avoided a lot of damage from open black lens bracket thunder strike close black lens bracket. Granstar, that little guy who attacked my subject before, wouldn't it be you? Gazel pointed his sword and said loudly to Granstar, although he had already given up on that subject, it seemed that Granstar had one more crime. HMPH, that guy deserved it. Granstar snorted disdainfully. And just at this moment, Rimuru's voice came from below. Stop it. Rimuru rode Ranga and condensed water balls in the air, and Ranga stepped on these water balls to come to the high sky. Finally came up. Chapter 30 Leaving the Dwarf Kingdom. Body repair complete. After the prompt in Gulanta's mind sounded, the surging magic gradually calmed down and eventually returned to its original state. Only in this state can Gulanta unleash his strongest power. Gulanta. Holy crap, you're really brave, aren't you? You actually dared to beat up their king in front of so many dwarves. Limuru was so surprised that his jaw almost dropped. He never dreamed that Gulanta would go up against Gazel. Hehe, Limuru, you came at the perfect time. Come, let's take him down together. HMPH. 2 against 1, the advantage is mine. Gulanta crossed his arms, looking at Gazel with a provocative look, seemingly not taking him seriously at all. He pondered to himself. HMPH, I don't believe that the two of us together can't beat him. Well, actually, I came to mediate. Limuru was speechless for a moment, but he still leapt and jumped onto Gulanta's shoulder, watching Gazel with him. Gazel's face instantly turned a little ugly, and he muttered to himself. Are you even shameless? You actually called for help. To be honest, when facing Gulanta just now, he already felt a little difficult to deal with. If another slime with such terrifying magic came, then he might very well fail. And at this moment, his people were watching this battle below. If he lost, then his prestige would be greatly affected, which was a scene Gazel absolutely did not want to see. Just then, a deafening sound came. Your Majesty, we are late. A group of Pegasus, covering the sky and the sun, galloped from afar. Their speed was extremely fast, like lightning. The entire team was neat in uniform, obviously a well-trained and powerful army. This was none other than King Gazel's direct, strongest legion, the Flying Knights. Gulanta sensed through magic that more than 100 dwarves with B-level strength were riding two-winged flying dragons with considerable strength to come to support them. Moreover, the dozen or so in the front were actually A-level strength. This was indeed a bit tricky. Gulanta was originally quite happy, but after seeing the opponent's such powerful lineup, his mood instantly became heavy. Especially Limuru, standing on Gulanta's shoulder, his little face was already pale with fright, constantly using telepathy to send messages to Gulanta. It's over. It's over. All the combat power of this country has come, let's run away. Gulanta. However, Gulanta didn't take Limuru's words seriously. Run away. That wasn't his style. Haha, Gulanta, what were you saying just now? 2 against 1. Are you okay? Gazel laughed heartily at this moment, teasing Gulanta, and he also put down the weapon in his hand. A dozen A-level dwarves came behind their king, standing side by side. If you want to fight, then fight, what's the point of talking nonsense? Gulanta's face was still so calm, as if he didn't take these 100 or so people seriously at all. Limuru slowly turned his head with difficulty, looking at Gulanta's cold and handsome face, his expression seemed to be saying. Holy crap, big brother elf, have you considered that I'm still on your shoulder? Haha, in this situation, there is no point in continuing to fight. Gulanta, are you really not going to consider the promise I made before? Gazel even put away the weapon he was holding tightly in his hand, clearly indicating that he had absolutely no intention of continuing the fight. However, even so, he still had a glimmer of hope, trying to persuade Gulanta to join his side. After all, they had always maintained a close alliance with the elf race. If they could successfully recruit a powerful existence like Gulanta, it would undoubtedly bring them a huge advantage. Hero King, Gulanta gently shook his head and said. I still prefer the Jura forest. I don't really like living under your absolute justice ideology. Alas, I knew it would be this result. Gazel shook his head with a face full of regret. He had to know that as a king, being able to invite the same person twice was already the greatest sincerity he could offer. Hey, Gulenta won't follow you. We have already decided to build a big family together. Limuru had completely understood that Gazel was trying to recruit Gulenta, and he even said it so bluntly in front of him, the nominal leader. This was simply poaching, and the prideful little slime couldn't stand it. Oh, from what you said, you plan to build a country. That's interesting. A country completely built by monsters. After hearing Limuru's words, a hint of surprise flashed in Gazel's eyes, but he quickly returned to calm and directly said his doubts to Limuru and others. Yes, that's right, so what? Limuru obviously hadn't reacted yet, and hurriedly replied in a somewhat flustered manner. If it's really like this. A look of contemplation appeared in Gazel's eyes again, while Gulenta knew exactly what Gazel was thinking. Gazel, I know what you're worried about. What we want to build is a peaceful and neutral country, and it will not pose a threat to the surrounding countries. Gulenta interrupted Gazel's inner weighing and said this promise to him. How did he get his title of Hero King? That was through years of conquest, crushing one evil monster after another, and obtaining it with iron-blooded means. His rule was based on the concept of absolute justice. In the definition of this world, monsters still have strength, but more often they bring danger and evil. HMPH. How can I believe that a country composed of monsters is not an evil organization, but for the sake of your elf race, I am willing to believe you once. The army on the opposite side matched their king's words, emitting an astonishing aura of murderous intent. Gulenta wouldn't be intimidated. What's the use of having more people? When the time comes, he will directly bring the 12 demon lords to Gazel's face and see if he dares to say that again. Gazel, then see you then. Limuru, Langa, let's go back. Gulenta knew there was no need to stay any longer, and King Gazel didn't stop him this time. But the dwarves beside him came to his side at this time. Your Majesty, do you really want to let these two terrifying monsters leave? We are ready to obey your Majesty's orders at any time. King Gazel directly waved his hand to interrupt the words of this captain dwarf, his black eyes watching Gulenta and the others' backs constantly moving away, not knowing what he was thinking. Chapter 31 Feet Ice Ghost. A blue-robed figure descended to the ground as lightly as a feather. Accompanying him was an ice-white wolf radiating a chilling aura. Just then, a small, delicate slime also leapt from the blue-robed figure's shoulder, landing steadily on the ground. Rimuru, I have some matters to attend to. You guys go back first. Granstar's voice suddenly rang out, as if recalling something important. He looked at Rimuru, his eyes revealing a sense of calm. Rimuru was slightly stunned, a hint of doubt welling up in his heart. However, he didn't press Granstar about what he needed to handle. Because he knew that this guy was always full of mystery, and his style of doing things was unpredictable. He just looked at Granstar with some concern and asked softly. Aren't you coming back with us? Are you sure you'll be alright staying here alone? Rimuru's tone carried a hint of concern. After all, they had just had a fierce conflict with the king here. Granstar already had a notorious reputation in the dwarf kingdom. This time, acting alone, who could predict whether it would attract other troubles or even dangers? Granstar naturally understood Rimuru's worries, but he just smiled slightly, patted Rimuru's head, and comforted him. Don't worry, I'll be fine. These little troubles are nothing to me. As Granstar spoke, he took a cube from the material storage and waved it in front of Rimuru. With my strength, what danger could there be? It's you who has already been expelled from the country, why are you still here? Gazel might really come knocking and want to chat about this matter. Don't forget, we still have the teleportation cube, right? Your return to the village means I can also return to the village, right? He explained to Rimuru and smiled mischievously. Rimuru suddenly realized that he seemed to have been expelled from the country by Gazel. If Gazel really came to his door, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but shudder. He really didn't want to see that face full of majesty and oppression again. Granstar, I have to leave first. Be careful. Before the words finished, he rode Ranga and sped away like lightning, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Granstar quietly watched Rimuru leave, until he was completely out of his sight. Then, Granstar shifted his gaze, but at this moment, his eyes became extremely cold. Come out. Don't hide. Did Gazel decide to send you to monitor me and Rimuru? Granstar said coldly towards a shadowy area, while releasing his own powerful magic. In the direction Granstar was looking, a petite figure stumbled and appeared, their eyes full of disbelief. How did you find me? Granstar's expression turned cold. The person in front of him was none other than Gazel's secret force, Shadow. "Haven't you answered my question yet?" Granstar said in an unkind tone. Shadow's face paused, and his expression returned to normal. He said softly, "The king has already withdrawn that order. I was sent here not to monitor you, but to deliver something to you." When Granstar heard that the other party was not there to monitor him, he withdrew his magic, but he raised an eyebrow and asked doubtfully. "Not monitoring. Delivering something. What is it?" Granstar really couldn't figure out what the old fox, Gazel, who had lived for hundreds of years, was planning. Shadow calmly took out an ice-blue longsword from behind him. His movements were very careful, as if he was holding some rare treasure. As soon as this ice-blue longsword appeared, it emitted a sharp, cold light. At the position of the hilt, there was also an embedded gem that exuded an aura of frost. In an instant, the moisture in the air around them directly condensed into ice and fell to the ground, and even the ground was stained with a layer of frost. Granstar's eyes were plain, but when he turned his gaze to the sword in Shadow's hand, a strange light flashed in his eyes. This sword is called Ice Demon, and it was personally forged by our king many years ago. Its most precious part lies in this core. Shadow's voice was a little low. Decades ago, in the Ice Plains, an extremely evil ice demon was born and caused a not-so-small turmoil. The most terrifying thing was that her magic power was comparable to that of an ordinary demon lord. This core was obtained by our king after conquering that ice demon lord. After that, it has always been properly placed in the treasure house. Shadow explained the origin of this ice demon sword in detail, and then raised his eyes and stared at Granstar. The doubts in Granstar's heart grew stronger. Such a precious weapon was easily given to him. He obviously didn't believe that such a good thing would happen, so he shifted his gaze and looked at Shadow again. "Why does your king want to give me such a weapon?" Granstar's tone carried a hint of incomprehension and vigilance. Regarding Granstar's incomprehension, Shadow didn't care and shook his head and continued to explain. "Our king said that giving you this sword is because he has high hopes for you, and this weapon is very suitable for you, but—" Shadow hesitated a little and didn't continue. As soon as Granstar saw it, Gazel would not give him weapons for nothing, and said lightly, "Speak. What request does your king have?" Shadow didn't expect that Granstar had already guessed that their king had something to ask Granstar for help before she even opened her mouth. "Our king said that he wants to meet the queen of the elves, so he needs your help." Shadow also said what the king meant, and she also knew why her king was so eager to meet the elf queen. "Oh, that's it." Granstar was a little puzzled. The dwarf king wants to see the elf queen. And he needs to ask him for help. Although he is also considered an elf, he has never met the elf queen. "Why does King Gazel want to meet the elf queen through me? Aren't you allies?" Hearing Granstar ask this, Shadow's expression darkened and he said, "Maybe it's because of the magic-powered soldier incident. Originally, we relied on the support of the elf clan's core technology, but after that, Lady Ramirez stopped cooperating with us in terms of magic technology and went to travel around the world. She refuses to see our king anymore. This technology is very important to our dwarf kingdom, so—" Shadow didn't continue and waited for Granstar's reply. "So that's the case. That really sounds like Ramirez's personality, running away to play out of spite." After a moment of silence, Granstar looked at Shadow. "I can help with this." Shadow was also overjoyed when she heard this, handed the ice demon to Granstar, and disappeared with a flicker of space. It seemed that she was going back to report. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 32 S-Level Material. Alert! Detected S-Rank Rare Material Ice Demon Core and S-Rank Rare Material Ice Soul Iron. The Dominator's notification suddenly echoed in Granstar's mind, and his expression instantly turned dull. Extract. Granstar couldn't help but grip the ice wraith in his hand, carefully stroking the blade, the frosty aura emanating from the blade making him feel a sense of comfort. "I didn't expect such a pleasant surprise. Dominator, don't extract them yet, just store them in the material library for now." "Okay." As a ray of light flashed, the ice wraith appeared in the material library, but unusually, it emitted a purple light, which other materials did not have. Could this be the purple light that distinguishes S-rank materials from ordinary ones? Granstar shook his head, never imagining that the material library had such a distinguishing feature. "Now that I've promised the Dwarf King, I'm afraid I'll have to go to Night Butterfly again." Granstar strode forward, picking out a mask from the mountain of materials and gently placing it on his face. This mask was exquisitely designed, cleverly covering nearly 2/3 of Granstar's face, giving him an air of mystery. It's worth mentioning that this mask was no ordinary item, but a masterpiece carefully synthesized by Granstar himself in the material library. Although its function was relatively simple, only able to shield others from perceiving magic, it was enough for Granstar. The reason for choosing to wear this mask was partly because Granstar felt that its appearance perfectly matched his aesthetic standards. And partly because of his own special circumstances, he was not very suitable for appearing in crowds. Therefore, this mask became his best cover. Arriving at the entrance of Night Butterfly, Granstar walked in without hesitation. As expected, the familiar shop assistant elf was dozing off again. He walked straight to this lovely elf, but perhaps because he was wearing a mask, the elf didn't seem to notice anyone entering the shop. Helpless, Granstar had to reach out and gently stroke her hair. Who would have thought that his hand would be immediately slapped away, and the elf rolled over and continued to sleep soundly. At this moment, Granstar noticed a clear water stain on the table, and upon closer inspection, there were even traces of saliva. He couldn't help but frown, quickly taking a few steps back while coughing softly. The elf then drowsily raised her head, opening her blurry eyes. "Who are you? Can't recognize me?" Granstar had no choice but to take off his mask to let the elf see more clearly. "Ah, it's Lord Granstar, that. I'm sorry." The elf immediately became embarrassed, and inconspicuously covered the water stain on the table. Her cute little face was red, and she quickly reacted. "Lord Granstar, I'll go get Sister Eve right away, and what are your orders?" Granstar quickly stopped the elf, coughing softly. I'm not here for drinks today, I'm here to see Madame Reina, I have something to ask her." "Oh, is that so?" Since it's Granstar's request, Granstar casually sat down in a seat and waited with his eyes closed. After a while, a slightly mature and soft female voice rang out. "Lord Granstar, what can I do for you?" Freyana wore a purple long dress, showing off her figure perfectly. Granstar slowly opened his eyes, his gaze falling directly on Madame Freyana in front of him. She exuded a mature, big sister-like aura, making people feel both chingial and at ease. "I'm here to inquire about the news of the Elf Queen Lamiris." Granstar told Madame Freyana the whole story without concealment. "After all, I also accepted the Dwarf King's request." A hint of disappointment flashed in Freyana's eyes, she had originally hoped that Granstar had come specifically for her. "Oh, so it's the Dwarf King." Freyana sighed softly. "Since the last cooperation ended in failure, the Queen has no longer asked about this matter. I didn't expect the Dwarf King to find you," Madame Freyana said with some helplessness, propping up her chin with her hand. Hearing this, Granstar couldn't help but frown, asking worriedly, "Is there no chance at all?" He thought to himself, he had just accepted someone else's things, it would be really embarrassing if he couldn't complete the task. "No, if it's Lord Granstar's request, it's not like there's no chance." Freyana looked at Granstar with a meaningful look. Granstar felt a little unnatural being stared at by this big sister-like elf. "Madame Freyana, please tell me." Freyana covered her small mouth and smiled slightly, not being coy. "I already reported you to the Queen last time, and the Queen is very interested in your existence. She has already given me a response, she will go to the Jura forest." Freyana winked at Granstar. For this suddenly appearing male elf, not only the Queen was very curious, but even the elves in the God realm wanted to see him. But what surprised her was Granstar's terrifying strength. How could she not know about the great battle that had taken place in the sky over the Dwarf Kingdom? She guessed that Granstar must have far surpassed the level of a high-level elf, reaching the level of a demon lord, which was really a bit unbelievable. The Elf Queen will go to the Jura forest. Granstar was also delighted in his heart. If the Elf Queen would go to the Jura forest, the Dwarf King would also come. When the time comes, he could let them talk face to face, wouldn't the task be completed? "Madame Freyana, I actually have something else I want to discuss with you." "Tell me about it." Freyana boredly tidied her long hair, wanting to hear what Granstar had to say. Actually, Granstar spent a few minutes explaining his thoughts. As for how the person in front of him would decide, it would depend on her reaction. "What?" Freyana stood up in surprise. "You and Mr. Rimuru plan to build a country in the Jura forest." She covered her small mouth in shock, unable to imagine it. "You know that the surrounding countries have been eyeing that place, and they will not recognize it. If it is not handled well, it may be a war between countries." Freyana was a little speechless. Their elven race was a peaceful race and rarely got involved in such things. "You still want me to open a branch there, can you guarantee the safety of our elves?" Granstar instead picked up the tea on the table and drank it all in one gulp, faintly uttering a word. Yes, comma. Chapter 33 Getting on the right track. Rimuru and his group finally arrived safely at the village. Even though it had only been a few days since they left, it felt like a long time. Look, Lord Rimuru is back. Upon hearing this, the goblins immediately swarmed over, enthusiastically welcoming and cheering. At that moment, Gobuta was riding a wolf, his face filled with pride. Now, this village had developed to be quite large, but unfortunately, besides the large open spaces, the only buildings that could be considered beautiful were the few igloos in the center. So, you all live in these igloos. Lord Rimuru, this is much simpler than we imagined. Kajin and the dwarf brothers stared at the incredibly crude village before them, realizing that they were facing a huge challenge right from the start. Haha, Kajin, we'll have to rely on you a lot from now on. Rimuru showed a slightly embarrassed smile. After all, it was a bit embarrassing to have others see such a dilapidated village. Unfortunately, the goblins were not good at technical work. What Granstar said before was true, professional matters still needed to be handled by professionals. Lord Rimuru, just give us your orders. This is a huge challenge for us, but the thought of this challenge makes me excited. Yes, X3. The dwarf brothers also looked at each other. Rimuru was relieved to hear the dwarves say this. Then, he introduced Kajin and the three dwarf brothers to the goblins in the village one by one. The most urgent matters at the moment were undoubtedly to quickly make enough clothes, build comfortable houses, and create a batch of practical tools. Lord Rimuru, please rest assured. We will definitely follow Master Kajin and the others closely and work hard to learn. The goblins were all overjoyed, knowing that they must not fail Lord Rimuru's earnest expectations. Each and every one of them made a guarantee. Rimuru watched the group of goblins with satisfaction, and then arranged for Kajin to lead some of the goblins to start teaching. Just then, Rigurd strode over in a hurry, looking quite anxious, as if he had something important to report. Lord Rimuru, you're finally back. There's something here that requires your final decision. Walking up to Rimuru, Rigurd knelt on one knee, respectfully reporting the relevant matter to Rimuru. Rimuru listened carefully to Rigurd's report and understood what had happened in the past few days. Rigurd, take me to see these goblins who have come to seek refuge. Yes, sir. Rigurd nodded respectfully, leading the way for Rimuru. Soon, they arrived at an igloo. Rimuru was shocked when he took a closer look. Inside were several small, weak goblins, about a few dozen of them at a glance. However, seeing that they were all freezing and unable to bear it, it must be because they had not evolved. Hey, they can't even stand this bit of cold. Just as Rimuru was wondering how to speak, the goblins suddenly knelt down to him. Oh great lord, we have a request, please grant it. A group of goblins shouted to him. Well, tell me about it first. Rimuru could roughly guess what they wanted to say. Yes, thank you very much. We hope to become your subordinates. One of the goblin chieftains said as a representative. The others around nodded in agreement. Please grant our wish. The goblin chieftain looked up with hopeful eyes, prostrating on the ground again. Rimuru suddenly felt a headache. Their village had just embarked on a path of prosperity and development, and they simply didn't have time to manage these guys. But these goblins were also having a hard time surviving, so they came over after hearing that there were two deities protecting a goblin village here, and they were living very well. That's why they had this idea. You should know that the ogre tribe and the lizardman tribe live in the Jura forest, and then there's the ogre race, and they are all secretly eyeing the hegemony of the entire forest. The already weak hobgoblin race is the goblin race, and they can only be ravaged in front of these powerful races. Rimuru's original intention was that he couldn't watch the weak being bullied, so he planned to ask them how many people there were first. The answer he got shocked Rimuru. What? You have 500 tribesmen? Yes, please, Lord, take us in. It was still this sentence. Rimuru was also taken aback by this number. Their village now had less than 200 goblins, and suddenly so many were going to be added. Wait a moment, I want to discuss it with Granstar. You should know that this village was not built by me alone. I don't have the sole authority either. The goblins nodded, they had long known that there was another very powerful deity in this village, and they couldn't help but become more respectful. Rimuru planned to wait for Granstar to come back before making a decision, took out the teleportation cube, injected magic power, and threw it into the air. A blue vortex slowly formed, and soon a small blue figure flew out, seeing Rimuru at a glance. Rimuru, you're finally willing to let me come back. You must have encountered some problem. The teasing and familiar voice reached everyone's ears. Didn't Granstar know Rimuru well enough? There must be something he needed to deal with for him to let him come back. Rimuru rolled his eyes helplessly when he heard Granstar's words, and pointed at the goblins kneeling on the ground, meaning to take a look. Granstar looked at the group of goblins kneeling on the ground in different clothes, who were looking at him with unbelievable eyes. This was simply a miracle. Granstar raised his good-looking eyebrows, not quite understanding what had happened. Seeming to see Granstar's doubts, the goblin chieftain repeated what he had said to Rimuru. Finally, please, two lords, please take us in. With their intelligence, it seemed that they could only say this sentence. After a moment of silence, Granstar didn't look at the goblins anymore, but turned his gaze to Rimuru on the side. His expression was a little strange. Rimuru, you've already decided how to arrange them in your heart. The purpose of calling me over is probably to establish prestige in their hearts. Am I right? Rimuru didn't deny it, and spread out his small hands. Granstar was still so smart, and guessed his intentions at once. Haha, Granstar, I didn't expect you to think of it all at once. After all, you are also the second in command of our village, aren't you? It could only be said that no one knew Rimuru better than Granstar. Chapter 34 Various Works. Rimuru's idea was simple, since they planned to build a country in the future. They would inevitably need a lot of people. Accepting them now would expand the village and speed up construction. It was possible that the work with the Kaijin dwarves might be a bit rushed, after all, they were taking in so many people. Alright, Granstar and I agree to your request, but you must remember. Rimuru also agreed to their request and explained his principles and the rules of the village. These goblins immediately knelt down, grateful beyond words. There were a total of 4 tribes, totaling 500. There was also a problem that gave Rimuru a headache. That was their names, but luckily there was Granstar's magic potion, otherwise it would have been a real disaster. It took 2 days to finally name them all, and only Rimuru would be so generous. He summoned the goblin chiefs. The evolved chiefs knelt in a row before Rimuru and Granstar. Led by Rigurdo, Gugurdo. However, one of the 4 chiefs was female. Rimuru treated her specially and gave her a name that suited a woman, Lilina. Listen well, I now bestow upon you ranks. Rigurdo, as the Goblin King, would be 1 level higher than the others. As for the remaining 4 chiefs, they would be appointed as Goblin Lords. Around them, the goblins of the 4 villages all knelt on the ground, looking at the 2 figures in the middle. Yes, thank you very much. 4. With this as a signal, cheers rang out around them. In this way, the number of people in the Goblin village multiplied several times, thus opening a new chapter. Myrit, can you make this? Granstar looked expectantly at the third of the dwarf brothers. He had just handed him a blueprint. A blueprint of a modern building. Lord Granstar, the technology in this blueprint you gave me is simply beyond what I have learned, I need time to study it. Myrit stared intently at the architectural blueprint in his hand. The drawings were too detailed, and he already had a rough outline in his mind, but... Lord Granstar, what are the craftsmanship requirements and the materials cement and steel mentioned on this? Granstar gave an explanation. That is, their errors cannot exceed the specified requirements. I have already had Rimuru make the materials, so you don't have to worry about that. Oh, from now on, the construction of our village's houses will be entrusted to you, Myrit. Don't worry, Lord Granstar, I will definitely not let you down. Granstar patted Myrit on the shoulder and left. Now the village can be said to be a town. Granstar thought that it was time to develop towards modern construction, so he took out a blueprint for an architectural project. Rimuru's residence. He was frowning in distress as he looked at the parchment on the table, which roughly depicted a miniature map of their village. Ah, how should I plan this? I don't really understand. Rimuru muttered to himself, apparently encountering some difficulties. Rimuru, what are you doing? Granstar strode into Rimuru's residence. He hadn't seen Rimuru bouncing around for a while, and he was a little unaccustomed to it. As soon as he came in, he saw Rimuru scribbling on the parchment, not knowing what he was busy with. Seeing Granstar come in, Rimuru's eyes lit up. Granstar, quickly help me think, where should I set up these buildings? It turned out that the village was developing too fast, and now they were planning to build medical centers and defense posts, but there must be a reasonable address arrangement. It was just like the construction of a city, which required prior planning. They couldn't just build whatever they wanted. The entire city had to operate reasonably and uniformly. What's so difficult about this? Granstar took the pen from Rimuru's hand and drew a few lines on the map. Rimuru looked over in a daze. First of all, you have to plan the road construction for the village first, look. Rimuru looked over curiously. Granstar pointed to a place and explained to Rimuru. Look at the area next to the road I just drew. This area is close to the water source, so we can concentrate the residences in this area, which is called the residential area. Granstar continued, pointing to another area. And on the other side of the water source, we can use it as a cultivation area, and this area is relatively flat, so we can use it as a troop area to train the troops. The more Rimuru listened, the brighter his eyes became. Look at the confluence of these roads, that is, the center of the village. I think we can build a large square here, which can be used for banquets and announcements. Finally, after Granstar finished speaking, Rimuru also looked at Granstar with admiration. What a great way to plan the roads first. The problem that had been bothering him for a long time was nothing in front of Granstar. Granstar, I think I should give you my position as the big boss. Rimuru grabbed Granstar's hand and said with a serious face. No, Rimuru, how could you have such a terrifying idea? Bloomend Kingdom. A man sat quietly in his office. His name was Fitz. He belonged to the Free Association of the small country of Bloomend and was the branch manager of Bloomend. In accordance with Baron Berwad's agreement, he had previously sent people out to investigate the reason for the disappearance of the aura of the storm dragon Veldora in the Jura forest. At the same time, this investigation team should also be back to report their work. Because it was a secret mission, the report could only be carried out in the reception room. He quietly waited for them to walk into the room, and then watched them sit down on the sofa without any image. The corners of the man's mouth twitched slightly. In front of him was a strange combination of two men and one woman, all of whom were C-rank adventurers. Kid, who was good at stealth, was a thief by profession and was very good at collecting information. Kabul, who had excellent defensive abilities, was a heavy warrior by profession and served as the vanguard in the team. Although he spoke frivolously, he was careful in his work. Ellen, who was good at special magic, was a sorcerer by profession and manipulated colorful magic, especially her movement magic was extremely excellent. She was the core of improving the team's survival rate. They were the rookie trio sent to investigate Veldora's sealed cave. Report quickly. Fitz asked coldly, without revealing his emotions. It's really deadly. I want to take a bath as soon as possible. What's deadly is me, who is responsible for arbitrating the arguments between the big brother and the big sister. Fitz listened to their words with a black line on his face. Seeing that the three people on the opposite side were full of complaints as soon as they came in, they didn't hear what he said just now at all. With a bang, Fitz slammed the table and shouted at the three rookies. What are you arguing about? Do you know what this place is? Hurry up and report your work, and get out after you're done. He sat down angrily. The three people on the opposite side were also startled, and then began to honestly report their work. Alas! Who told them they were wage earners? Chapter 35 Instructor. Inside the ice sculpture castle, Gulenster comfortably lay on the ice chair, leisurely eating the fruit brought by the goblins. This frozen date is not bad, Limuru, do you want to try it? Limuru lay on the side, flipping through documents. These documents were organized by Rigardo, detailing matters big and small, all of which needed his review. HMPH, Gulenster, you should come and help, all you do is slack off. If I could beat you. Oh, is that frozen date really that delicious? Limuru looked at Gulenster's expression of enjoyment, and his heart was also a little moved. He picked up a frozen date from the ice plate and chewed it in his mouth. Great sage, analysis complete. This is an ordinary fruit date that has been frozen. It contains rich pulp and has a simple cooling effect. Listening to the great sage's analysis in his mind, he didn't taste anything while chewing it in his mouth. He almost forgot that he had no sense of taste. Limuru immediately put on a bitter face towards Gulenster. Gulenster also shook his head with a smile and comforted Limuru. Haha, I almost forgot that you have no sense of taste. What a pity for such delicious fruit. But don't worry, you'll have a sense of taste when you can take on a humanoid form in the future. Gulenster seemed to know something, but he didn't explain it in detail, and continued to enjoy the fruit leisurely. Just then, Rigardo walked over respectfully, came to Limuru's front, as if he had something to report. Oh, Rigardo, do you have something to say again? Rigardo bowed to Gulenster and Limuru before speaking. It's like this, the cooperation between our newly formed goblin cavalry and the frost wolves is not yet very skilled, and these goblins have nothing to do except go out hunting. Oh, these goblin cavalry are also newly formed, so we can't ask too much of them. Just ask them to master shadow summoning first. Lemuru thought it was a big deal. He didn't expect the newly formed goblin cavalry to have any combat power. It would be good if they could complete simple hunting. But, they have been a little shy lately. The frost wolves also just lie down and sleep every day. Rigardo was also worried that this would fail the expectations of the two adults. What, sleeping? Lemuru couldn't help but look suspiciously at Gulinster, who was lying on the chair sleeping. Could it be that the frost wolves inherited some bad habits from you? Gulinster opened his ice-blue eyes when he heard Lemuru's words. He retorted to Lemuru unhappily. I'm not taking the blame for this. I used Dominator to analyze the information of the frost wolves before, and there are no negative states. Then why are these frost wolves all like you, sleeping after work in broad daylight? Gulinster shrugged his hands indifferently and said. The frost wolves can sleep if they want to, anyway, it has nothing to do with me, if there is. Lemuru immediately became unhappy when he heard Gulinster's words and jumped up excitedly. What we want to build is a country. What's the matter if we don't have our own armed forces, and if the usual army training can't keep up, how can we form combat power? After speaking, he looked at Gulinster's lazy eyes with a serious face. Well, my lord Lemuru, you are so right. Gulinster raised his hands to express his agreement, but what he was thinking in his heart was, it's hard to even get a good night's sleep. Speaking of which, I seem to have seen the plot before, and Lemuru wasn't so busy now. Could it be that I changed something? Lemuru saw Gulinster's appearance, and his small eyes rolled around. He turned his head and said to Rigardo, I've decided to arrange an instructor for the newly formed goblin cavalry. Lord Lemuru, I think it's feasible. But the choice of instructor. Rigardo looked at Lemuru with embarrassment again. There really wasn't anyone qualified to be the instructor. As for the choice of instructor, Lemuru pondered for a while and looked at Gulinster. Rigardo also looked over in disbelief. Perhaps sensing the fiery gazes of the two, Gulinster rolled his eyes. You're good, Lemuru, so you were waiting for me here. Lemuru imitated Gulinster's appearance and waved two small hands transformed from slime fluid. There's no way, you're the most idle one now. Do a good job, I'm optimistic about you. Gulinster received affirmation from the big leader. Gulinster found that he couldn't resist Lemuru's rascality, so he had to let Rigardo take him to the goblin cavalry camp. Under Rigardo's leadership, Gulinster saw this group of lazy goblin cavalrymen. They were lying in the shadows in a disheveled manner, without the image of a cavalryman. The frost wolves were squinting and lying on the ground, and the goblins were using the wolves as pillows, imitating sleeping in a decent manner. Cough cough. Rigardo was a little embarrassed to let Lord Gulinster see this scene. Get up quickly, Lord Lemuru has arranged for an instructor to come to you, don't sleep. When these frost wolves and goblins heard that it was the instructor arranged by Lord Lemuru, they quickly stood up, lined up in rows, looking like they were waiting for inspection. Why did Lord Gulinster come in person? Yes, it's so strange. They were quite surprised when they saw that it was Gulinster. They were even more surprised than seeing Lemuru. You must know that this adult likes to sleep in the ice sculpture castle when nothing happens. He rarely cares about things, just like Lemuru often complains, a big salted fish. Gulinster nodded when he saw that they were standing neatly, and it wasn't as bad as Rigardo said. Hey, I was sleeping well in the castle. Lemuru insisted that I come over to be your instructor. There's no way, don't let me down. Gulinster also said simply. Don't worry, we won't let you down, sir. Rigardo was the first to stand up and shout. Oh, remember what you said. Gulinster also smiled maliciously, thinking about how to train them later. Yes, Rigardo was a little strange, but he didn't take it to heart. Gulinster looked at the group of frost wolves again, each of them still looking sleepy, frowning. Could it be that these frost wolves are really affected by me? Shouldn't be. Gulinster guessed that perhaps it was affected by the ice attribute. Generally, ice attribute monsters don't like high-temperature environments, and their bodies will remain in a low-temperature state, and they will usually reduce their physical activity. Opening parenthesis. Chapter 36, Being Lazy and Meeting a Trio. Granstar saw that the goblins and frost wolves were all looking at him. It seemed that he had to act like an instructor. I had already thought about the training plan before I came. You guys should just train according to the method I give you. To think that Lord Granstar would personally train us, this is great. One of the goblins looked very happy. Granstar smiled when he saw this. Wait until later when you have something to cry about. Goblins and frost wolves, separate first. I won't train your cooperation ability for now, I will first get rid of your laziness. The goblins all stood apart according to what Granstar said. Granstar used his magic power to outline a magic circle on the ground. This magic circle covered an area of about 150 meters in diameter, and then more than 100 ice stakes emerged from the ground. Lord Granstar, what are you doing with so many ice stakes? These goblins looked at Granstar curiously, a little confused for a moment. Weren't they going to get rid of their laziness? You each get an ice stake, stand in the magic circle for me. Granstar said loudly to these goblins at this time. Oh, I'll choose this thicker one. Hey, then I'll choose this one. Granstar saw that they had all chosen, and then slowly said what the training was this time. You have to use all your abilities within today, but you can't use weapons, and you have to destroy the ice pillar in front of you, then you will be considered qualified. What? Just destroy the ice pillar in front of you. It's so simple, watch me. A goblin said with a nonchalant expression. Watch my sweeping kick skill. Bang, not even an ice shard fell from the ice pillar. This goblin continued to use skills unwillingly, using skills continuously until all his magic power was exhausted. Woo, Lord Granstar, this is too difficult. Granstar ignored these goblins and released a slightly modified ice magic circle to the frost wolves on the other side. This magic circle would constantly rain down hailstones with considerable power, and Granstar asked these frost wolves to enter this magic circle. Your goal is to avoid these hailstones. Remember that only those of you who can survive in this magic circle for an hour will be considered qualified. After that, why is it so hard? My magic power is almost exhausted, what should I do? Awoo. In one magic circle, one frost wolf after another was hit by the high-speed falling hailstones and knocked away. Then they paused outside for a while, and then Quan back into the magic circle. Juru Grand Forest. Today the sun is shining brightly, the breeze is gentle, and the temperature is pleasant. It's the perfect time to slack off. On a tree that pierces into the clouds, countless thick branches like thighs are intricately distributed. On one of the branches, there seems to be a small blue guy lying there. When the camera zooms in, you can see that delicate face, with a pair of transparent wings growing behind it. It turns out that this is a petite elf, leisurely enjoying a midday nap in the sun. Faintly, there are bursts of terrified shouts. Run! Why are these flame ants chasing us so relentlessly? It's all because you, Captain, had to poke that ant nest. Now it's good, you've screwed us over. Ailing complained to Kabul while speeding up her pace. The masked woman behind them was speechless. How many times has this happened? How exactly have they managed to survive until now? Stop complaining, if you don't run faster, you'll really be eaten by ants. Kabul couldn't help but turn his head and remind them. He ran at the front, his eyes immediately fixed on the big tree not far away, and he was immediately overjoyed. Follow me, there's a big tree ahead, let's climb up. With Kabal's shout, the group rushed towards the big tree like a gust of wind. When everyone came to the bottom of the tree, they all raised their heads and looked up at the towering giant tree in front of them. Wow, it's so tall. There were bursts of exclamations from the crowd. Aren't you going to climb up quickly? Do you still have the leisure to sigh here? Kabul urged anxiously. Oh. Hearing Kabal's urging, everyone woke up from their dreams and began to climb the tree with their hands and feet. Their skilled movements clearly showed that this was not the first time they had done such a thing. At this time, a large group of flame ants were tightly surrounding the big tree, hissing at the people on the tree. Each of these flame ants is more than a meter long, and their huge bodies look extremely intimidating. Kabul secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he made the right bet. These guys don't seem to be good at climbing trees, and it seems that their IQ is not very high. Haha, wanting to catch this great master is simply a daydream. Kabul stood on the tree, shouting loudly at the flame ants on the ground with a triumphant expression. His face was full of confidence and pride, as if he had forgotten the embarrassing appearance of being chased just now. However, Kabal's provocation angered this group of flame ants. They took a few steps back, and then began to violently hit the tree trunk with their hard skulls. The huge impact caused the entire tree to shake violently, and the people on the tree suddenly turned pale and were terrified. Captain, please stop talking nonsense, she shouted with a crying voice. At this moment, everyone's hearts were full of fear and unease, fearing that they would accidentally fall from the tree and become a delicious meal for the flame ants. And at the crown of the tree, the shaking was the most violent. A little guy who should have been sleeping in it, opened his eyes in a daze. What's going on? Is there an earthquake? There was another violent shake, and the little thing didn't sit still and fell down. Ah, what fell on my face? Ailing quickly took off the thing on her face, and after seeing what it looked like, she couldn't help but exclaim. Wow, a cute little person. As she said that, she pinched the little person's face with her hands, causing the little person in her hand to immediately make a disgusted expression. The people around her heard Ailing's movement and looked over. Especially after seeing the little thing in Ailing's hand, their expressions were even more wonderful. No, why does this little guy look so familiar? Kabul was also the first to speak, expressing his question. That masked woman was obviously not as stupid as these people, especially after seeing the appearance of the little thing in Ailing's hand, she exclaimed. This is an elf. The others who heard this exclamation also belatedly reacted. Damn, isn't the appearance of this little thing exactly the same as the rumored appearance of elves? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 37, Someone is Missing. Since you already know, why don't you hurry up and let go of me, especially you, woman? The crisp voice echoed in everyone's ears, especially those last few words, the tone carrying a hint of iciness. However, such words spoken from such a petite body didn't seem to carry much threat, but rather made people find it somewhat adorable. Oh my, this little sprite can actually talk. A surprised voice came. Yeah, how come it feels like it's even more arrogant than yours truly? Kabaru echoed from the other side. The masked lady felt quite helpless at these people's reactions. Shouldn't your attention be focused on why a sprite would appear here? Bang! Accompanied by a loud noise, the tree shook violently again, the color instantly draining from everyone's faces, revealing expressions of horror. It's over, today we're probably going to die together with this cute little sprite. Ailing subconsciously hugged the little sprite tightly in her arms, closing her eyes tightly. The little sprite frantically rolled its eyes, almost suffocating from being squeezed so tightly. At the same time, it looked down at the ground and discovered that it was a group of C-ranked flame ants causing trouble. With such weak monsters, are you guys really that scared? Oh, so it's the chicken trio. Never mind then. It was already prepared to take action, but someone else acted faster. The masked lady flashed, leaping into the air as light as a bird, and then landed steadily. The masked lady moved quickly and decisively, directly covering the sword in her hand with raging flames, instantly forming a mighty flame sword. Then, she unhesitatingly swung her sword at the flame ants. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding flame ants were completely cleared away. However, she was actually unwilling to use her abilities too much. After all, in her current special state, it was best to minimize the consumption of her abilities as much as possible. But facing the crisis in front of her, she couldn't stand idly by. After struggling internally, she finally made a decision. Just then, the little sprite noticed the masked woman on their side, a flash of surprise in its eyes. It never expected that she would come here too. Since the masked woman was in this team, then it didn't need to take action anymore. It decided to quietly be a bystander and see what would happen next. Maybe this group of people could even take it back to the village. Wow, Miss Shizu is so amazing. We're finally saved again. Ailing breathed a sigh of relief, looking at the masked lady with a face full of surprise, admiring her strength. Yeah, this time we owe Miss Shizu again for saving our lives, thank you so much. The others echoed, their faces filled with gratitude. The other two also expressed their gratitude to Shizu, but at this moment, it was impossible to see the changes in expression of Shizu, who was wearing a mask. She was just slightly dazed for a while, and did not respond to them, then turned to deal with the flame ants that were still barely alive. The little sprite witnessed all this in Ailing's arms, and couldn't help but look at the three people with a playful expression. Tisk tisk tisk, it seems they've encountered a lot of trouble like this before. Afterwards, they found a place to rest, and then placed the little sprite on the ground, the four of them forming a circle, 4 pairs of eyes staring at it. The little sprite felt uncomfortable being watched by them, and couldn't help but complain. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a handsome sprite before? In fact, this little sprite was the miniature Q version of Granstar. You know, it was bored after training goblins and frost wolves for a few days, and was afraid of being caught by Rimuru, so it deliberately ran outside to slack off. It didn't expect to run into these 3 people, and a masked woman. He really is a sprite, that's so strange. One of them said, and even wanted to reach out and touch it, but Granstar slapped it away fiercely. The person who was hit cried out in pain. So fierce. Kabaru didn't expect this sprite to be so fierce, not even letting him touch it, with a look of disgust. You better not touch me, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. Granstar glared at the group of people, saying fiercely. Ailing was simply about to be melted by cuteness, and uncontrollably hugged the sprite in her arms again. So cute. Granstar originally wanted to resist, but seeing that it was a cute girl, hugging was fine, it wouldn't lose out anyway. Hey, how come you can touch me, but you're fierce to me? The captain said listlessly, with a sloppy face. HMPH, no wonder the sprite hates you for being so ugly. You. The others silently turned their heads away, but their shaking shoulders betrayed their expressions. Goblin Village. Have you guys not found that Granstar guy yet? Rimuru was sitting on Ranga's head, looking at the goblins and frost wolves below with a troubled expression. Lord Rimuru, we've searched the whole village, but we can't find him. Gabuta stood up, saying with a face full of grievance. In fact, he really wanted to say that if Lord Granstar was determined to hide and slack off, they wouldn't be able to find him even if they searched the whole world. But he didn't dare to say it in front of Rimuru. HMPH. That Granstar runs so fast. Rimuru was full of anger. He had just given Granstar, who liked to slack off, a coaching job, but after only a few days of training, when it was just starting to have some effect, he let Rigyur take over. He ran off to slack off himself. Thinking of this, he became angry, but thinking that this guy usually liked to go out and hunt some monsters, he gave them some orders. You guys cooperate with the frost wolves to search in the forest, you must bring back this cunning guy. Rimuru could already imagine that when he saw Granstar, he would immediately arrange a lot of affairs for him. Yes. Gabuta immediately stood up straight and gave a standard military salute, which Granstar usually taught them during training. After Rimuru gave the order, he left. There were still a lot of materials waiting for him, this tool man, to make. And in the forest, the trio were gathered together, discussing something. Oh my god, we can't go forward, something big happened, can you guess what I saw? Saw what? The other three people, oh no, there was also a sprite, were looking at the person who had just gone out to scout the road back with a strange expression. He was sweating profusely, and took a long time to organize his words. Ah, I remember when we came here before, the place in front was just a dilapidated goblin village, but what did I just see? The other two people looked strange. They did discover a goblin village in front when they explored the Storm Dragon's cave before, but what was so strange about that? What did you see? Tell us quickly. Chapter 38 Hostage Incident. The scout swallowed hard before continuing his story. I quietly approached to investigate, and what I found was an even larger goblin village. No, it can't even be called a village anymore. Except for the lack of city walls, its scale is almost comparable to a town. How is that possible? Kabul and Ailing exclaimed in unison, their faces showing strange expressions as they looked at the scout in their team, wondering if he had misjudged the situation. How could I be mistaken? Besides, every goblin there exudes a chilling aura, exceptionally powerful. Not only that, but there are also goblins riding ice wolves patrolling around. He quickly shook his head, anxiously denying that he had made a mistake, and described in detail everything he had seen before. Hearing these words, Kabul and Ailing's eyes widened, their faces filled with disbelief. You should know that when they came here to investigate last time, there was clearly only a dilapidated and inconspicuous goblin village here. Now someone is telling them that the place has turned into a large-scale city, and there are even goblins who can tame ice wolves that seem to have considerable strength patrolling in it, which is really unacceptable. The masked lady, who was listening beside them, also showed a look of doubt, her beautiful eyes flashing with confusion, seemingly full of questions and curiosity about this matter. At this moment, Gulantasta, who was in Ailing's arms, looked at the three people in front of him with disdain, muttering to himself. So, they just discovered their village. I thought they had discovered something amazing. What a disappointment. Gulantasta made a disdainful, tisk, sound, and then continued to narrow his eyes in Ailing's arms, as if everything outside had nothing to do with him. Despite this, the group ultimately decided to go and see for themselves. After all, seeing is believing. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they would still be uneasy and unable to believe it. So, with uneasy feelings, the group walked towards the discovered village, filled with caution along the way, for fear of being discovered. Meanwhile, on the goblin side, Lord Limulu, it's bad. There are some sneaky humans outside, and Limulu stopped making cement materials and looked at Ligulu, who came to report. He was Ligulid's son and also an excellent warrior in the village. Humans. Why would they come to a place like this? Could it be humans? That's great. We must establish a good relationship with them. Of course, if the other party is like those rude adventurers encountered before, they can only be dealt with silently and sent to the monsters as feed. These people are acting suspiciously, wandering around outside our village in a swaggering manner. They should have been sent by that country to investigate the situation around us. But Ligulu seemed to have other things to report, looking hesitant. Limulu naturally noticed this and asked curiously. What's wrong? Is there anything new to report? Yes, Lord. We have found Lord Gulantasta, whom we have been searching for. Ligulu reported with a serious expression. Limulu was overjoyed. Finding Gulantasta at this time was the best thing possible. However, he noticed a strange expression on Ligulu's face and couldn't help but feel suspicious. Lord Gulantasta is currently in the hands of those humans, but it seems he has been taken hostage by a human magician. Ligulu's voice carried a hint of hesitation and disbelief. Limulu's face instantly stiffened, and the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became extremely strange. Ligulu, are you kidding me? Gulantasta, that guy, was actually taken hostage. Limulu simply couldn't believe his ears. He knew that Gulantasta was very powerful, and ordinary people were no match for him at all. How could he be easily taken hostage? Lord Limulu, your subordinate also finds it hard to believe, but Lord Gulantasta is indeed in their hands. Ligulu looked at Limulu strangely, appearing very helpless. Limulu fell into deep thought, and he began to realize that things might be more complicated than he thought. What exactly caused Gulantasta to fall into the hands of humans? Could it be the strong people sent by the human empire? Or am I overthinking it? Let's go, take the Frost Wolf cavalry and go with me to investigate. Yes, Lord Limulu. Ligulu gave a standard military salute with a serious expression, then turned and left to summon the Ice Wolf cavalry. Lanya, Limulu called out softly. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge wolf with snow-white fur emerged from his shadow and landed lightly beside Limulu. Master. Lanya lowered her head and responded softly. Limulu leapt up and landed steadily on Lanya's head. In an instant, Lanya dashed towards the outside of the village at an astonishing speed, like a shining meteor. Outside the village. It's bad, we've been discovered. They sent ice wolves to chase us. How could we be discovered? Then let's run. Gulantasta looked at the people who were speaking with a dumbfounded expression. It would be strange if you weren't discovered like this. How can you investigate like this, circling around someone else's village several times? It would be strange if you weren't beaten. However, Limulu should know that I'm here and sent a large army to welcome me. Great. Before they could run a few steps, a huge snow-white ice wolf blocked their way at a terrifying speed. The faint pressure of magic made them gasp for breath. What kind of terrifying monster is this that they have never seen before? Be careful, judging from the aura of this monster, it has at least A-level strength. The masked lady stood up, her expression more serious than ever. A-level monster. Don't joke around, how can we beat it? We're only C-level. The three of them swallowed hard, and what made them even more desperate was that the Ice Wolf cavalry behind them had already surrounded them, and the goblins above were looking at them with strange eyes. The snow-white giant wolf in the front slowly approached and came in front of them, and the suffocating magic made their minds go blank. Then they saw the snow-white giant wolf lowered its head, and a blue, round slime slid down from it. This was a strange scene. Chapter 39 Accident. They rubbed their eyes, wondering if they were seeing things. A slime actually riding on the back of an A-rank snow-white giant wolf. It was simply unbelievable, they felt like the sky was about to fall. They stared at the slime in terror, watching its gaze constantly shift, carefully scrutinizing each of them. Finally, its gaze settled on Ailing, or rather, on the elf she was holding in her arms. Huh, this situation doesn't look like a hostage situation at all. Rimuru muttered softly. Ranga had only released a little bit of his aura, and these humans were already scared, pale and trembling. Such a display made it hard to believe they could capture Granstar. Rimuru continued to blink at Granstar, his eyes seeming to say, "Blink once if you're being threatened." Granstar looked at Rimuru frantically blinking at him, feeling speechless and rolling his eyes. The four people also noticed Rimuru's actions, and couldn't help but become vigilant. Could it be that this evil monster is eyeing the elf in my arms? Ailing said nervously. Looks like it. Another person chimed in. In this tense atmosphere, these people were actually secretly communicating. We will never hand the little elf over to these evil monsters. Ailing shouted angrily, then hugged Granstar tightly, striking a pose of sworn resistance. Her two teammates looked at her like that, and bitter smiles appeared on their faces. Big sister, now is not the time to be brave. And if you shout like that, are you trying to make us die faster? At this moment, The surrounding goblins and frost wolves looked at each other, their expressions the same as Rimuru's, completely dumbfounded. Huh. Rimuru couldn't help but question, muttering to himself. What do you mean we are evil monsters? We look very friendly, okay. Besides, we did come here for the elf in your hand, but how can you say we're stealing? Although the human's voice was small, with their keen hearing, it was no different than speaking loudly in their ears. Rimuru finally understood that Granstar was not under any threat at all, and he had made a big fuss to come and save him. What a loss. Especially seeing Granstar almost buried in that female mage's chest, he felt even more displeased. Granstar, you, working is never seen, but now hugging a human little sister, you are really something. Rimuru directly used thought communication to roar at Granstar. Granstar was obviously stunned for a moment, and then began to explain. Haha, Rimuru, isn't it because the village is under construction and it's too noisy, so I ran outside to sleep. Also, these humans are purely an accident, and I'm feeling very troubled now. Rimuru felt speechless when he heard this. Troubled? Troubled my ass. Take a closer look at this Miss Mask, don't you have a sense of déjà vu? Granstar then sent another sentence, causing Rimuru's original complaints to stop abruptly. At this time, Rimuru noticed a slender masked woman standing in front of them, and his thoughts involuntarily fell into memories. Isn't this her? So, what should we do now? Rimuru's heart was full of doubts. Of course, bring them back to the village and treat them well. Oh, right, don't tell them about me, I want to lie down a little longer. Granstar's tone seemed very casual. Hearing Granstar's words, a black line appeared on Rimuru's face. Rimuru sighed inwardly. Granstar was definitely the most slacking and laziest person he had ever met. During this time, he had almost become a production machine, but Granstar ignored many things. Oh well, let's deal with the immediate matter first. Rimuru shook his head helplessly. I'm very sorry. I think I should be considered the leader of these monsters. May I ask if the three of you are adventurers sent by the surrounding human empires? Were you specifically dispatched to investigate the situation around us? Don't worry, although we are monsters, we don't have any malice. Hearing the other party's polite and courteous inquiry, the trio couldn't help but feel very surprised. The monster didn't attack immediately. Not only that, but it could actually speak like a human. Wait, a slime can talk. To express our apologies and goodwill, I have prepared a sumptuous banquet in the village. I would like to invite you all to visit. I believe this will be helpful to your work. Rimuru extended an invitation without hesitation, and even turned his gaze to the masked woman standing in front, indicating that she was also invited. What? Invite us to your base? No, 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 I'm afraid. Kabaru originally wanted to refuse the proposal decisively, but when he noticed the group of strong and fearsome goblins and frost wolves in front of him, they were all staring at him with sharp eyes. Kabaru was startled, and swallowed the second half of the sentence that was about to come out. His face instantly turned pale, and he quickly changed his tone and said, well, actually, that's not impossible. His voice was obviously much smaller than before, and he seemed a little lacking in confidence, even trembling a little, as if his heart was full of unease and hesitation. That's good. I'll lead the way. Rimuru took a deep breath, trying to make his voice sound more gentle. Then, he jumped onto Ranga without hesitation and sped off towards the village. The others looked at Rimuru's departing back, and a sense of helplessness welled up in their hearts. They didn't want to follow Rimuru's arrangement, but they didn't have a better way. So, they had no choice but to follow behind reluctantly, walking silently. Along the way, the atmosphere was unusually dull, no one spoke, only the sound of footsteps and breathing intertwined. It's over. I've never been to a monster's lair in my life. There's no escape this time. It was only when they got closer that they realized that what they saw outside was only the tip of the iceberg of this village. Flat roads, clean sanitation, why are there dwarves? When they got to the innermost part, they also saw a tall ice-sculpted castle. Who lives here and enjoys life so much? Granstar yawned silently. Chapter 40, Sudden Runaway. In a spacious and bright room, decorated adequately, a room specifically for entertaining guests, a noisy quarrel erupted. Wow, this thing called hot pot is so delicious. And these thinly sliced pieces of meat, you can eat them after just a quick dip. So fragrant. This fruit-flavored ice cream is also good. Milady, you should eat meat with your meal. Eating cold things isn't good for your stomach. HMPH, mind your own business. Oh, and remember to save some meat for me, otherwise. Yes, of course. It's so delicious. It's been so long since I've had such good food. I thought I was going to be gnawing on tree bark in the forest. The masked lady kneeling to the side, on the other hand, was eating slowly and steadily. The sound of enthusiastic eating echoed in the room. At this moment, Rimuru, sitting across the table, silently watched everything before him, a hint of helplessness on his face. Meanwhile, Granstar, standing beside him, coughed lightly and directly transmitted his voice. Open black lens bracket. Perhaps they haven't had anything good to eat for days. After all, when I saw them, they were desperately fleeing. Close black lens bracket. Rimuru was a little speechless. Was that really the case? These people had looked unwilling just a moment ago, as if they were about to die. But now, at the sight of roasted meat, they immediately transformed into something else entirely, completely disregarding their image. Thinking of this, Rimuru couldn't help but shake his head. Why would the human empire send these three people? Oh well, it's likely that these guys simply lack basic adventure or common sense. Burp, 3 hiccups. After seeing them full and satisfied, Rimuru also began to formally start the conversation. Well then, please allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Rimuru, the master of this village. Did you come here with a mission? Hearing Rimuru's words, they were slightly shocked. Such a powerful monster village was actually led by a slime. Initially, they were hesitant about whether to tell the truth, but Aileen directly blurted it out. Indeed, we also received an order from the Joint Branch leader to come here to investigate the anomalies around the Storm Dragon's cave. The other teammates looked at Aileen in surprise. Milady, why are you confessing so quickly? They're monsters. What if they kill us all? We'd have nowhere to complain. Oh, is that so? Why is the human empire so concerned about the Jura forest? Rimuru was a little surprised, and at the same time, a little puzzled. The three of them looked at Rimuru in surprise. Don't you know? Oh, is there something I don't know? Could you please tell me? Don't worry, we are all friendly monsters, with no malice. Rimuru also looked at the three of them, while secretly glancing at the masked lady who seemed uninterested. Well, that's good, haha. Actually, this isn't a secret. You should know that the Jura forest has many mineral resources, as well as many living monster races, so of course it will attract a lot of attention. Of course, the most important thing is the legendary hidden treasure of the Jura forest. Treasure. Legend says that 300 years ago, this place was a city, and a dragon destroyed it for that treasure, and was eventually sealed here by the hero. After that dragon was sealed 300 years ago, the demon lords and surrounding countries jointly created a treaty. That is, not to invade this forest. But recently, I don't know why, the aura of the dragon guarding this forest has disappeared, so that treaty. Dragon. Treaty. This time, Rimuru was really puzzled. What treasure? Why hadn't Ranga told him about it? Yes, it is this treasure that makes the surrounding countries covet the Jura forest. It is said that with this treasure, one can easily possess power comparable to a demon lord. But this is just a rumor, whether it's true or not is unknown. Aileen lowered her voice when she said the last sentence. Rimuru secretly guessed that the dragon they were talking about should be the storm dragon, but this treasure. Open black lens bracket Ranga, do you know if there is any treasure in the forest? Close black lens bracket. Ranga, who was hiding in Rimuru's shadow, opened his eyes, also looking puzzled. Open black lens bracket Master, I have lived in the Jura forest for so long, I have never heard of any treasure. These humans like to spread rumors, Master, don't believe them. Close black lens bracket. So that's how it is. Rimuru shook his head, telling himself not to speculate. He would just ask Storm Dragon later. After Rimuru finished asking these questions, he turned his attention to the masked lady on the side. I wonder, Miss Masked Lady, could we go outside and talk? The masked lady looked at Rimuru with some surprise. You can call me Shizu. Go outside and talk. Yes, there are just some questions I want to ask. All right then, Shizu nodded. Under the surprised gazes of the trio, Rimuru and Miss Shizu went outside to talk. Driven by curiosity, the three of them secretly followed behind. Hey, what are they talking about? They look so happy. Don't push me. How would I know? But they seem pretty happy, like they're friends who have known each other for a long time. Suddenly, an anomaly occurred. Granstar then opened his closed eyes and looked at Shizu. He could feel a scorching and violent magical aura. Is it coming? A flash of surprise crossed Granstar's eyes as he murmured. Rimuru, who was happily chatting, was startled. Miss Shizu, what's wrong? He saw Shizu squatting on the ground in pain, even the mask on her face had a slight crack. She kept murmuring, can't suppress it anymore. Go, I don't want to hurt you. Huh. Rimuru hadn't realized the danger and still wanted to go forward to help Shizu, who had fallen to the ground. Rimuru, get away from there. The magic power in her body has gone berserk, it's very dangerous. What? Granstar's figure appeared behind Rimuru, directly hugging Rimuru and moving away from here. Boom. The surrounding magic power began to become scorching hot, and an alarming red magic power surged from Miss Shizu's body. A giant magic circle appeared on the ground, and the surrounding magic power began to become violent. The trio hiding aside were stunned. How could this suddenly happen? That's a high-level summoning magic. For some reason, Aileen recognized the magic and exclaimed in surprise. Damn, high-level magic corresponds to A-level strength or above, doesn't that mean it's Calamity class? It's over, it's over. If it's really Calamity class, destroying a city would be easy. Rimuru looked at Granstar with some concern, and at the same time received a reassuring look. Chapter 41 Summoning, Flame Giant. A huge magic circle suddenly lit up, flashing with dazzling light. Accompanying the flashing light, a giant troll flowing with hot lava appeared in front of Jing. This troll exuded a powerful aura, as if it were a demon rising from the depths of hell. It was the summoned A-ranked Flame Giant. The house, originally used to entertain guests, was instantly engulfed by raging flames. The heatwave surged, suffocating everyone. This powerful magical aura swept through like a storm, putting the entire village on high alert. This is bad, our attacks are completely ineffective. What should we do? Kabaru shouted anxiously. However, at that moment, a huge fireball rapidly magnified before their eyes. Faced with such a terrifying skill, they could only close their eyes in despair. Their resistance was simply a joke. After all, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great, and they were powerless to resist. Boom. The expected severe pain did not come, and they couldn't help but open their eyes in confusion. The scene before them shocked them. A tiny figure was standing in front of them, using one hand to block the fireball that was enough to destroy everything. It's the sprite. Ailing stared wide-eyed, looking up in disbelief at this seemingly weak sprite. Granstar ignored the surprise of the three of them, but quickly turned his head, his eyes locked on Rimuru. Rimuru, the magic power in Miss Jing Yang's body has gone berserk. Quickly suppress her temporarily, otherwise the village will be destroyed. Okay, Granstar, you can focus on dealing with that summoned flame giant. I will take Miss Jing away from here temporarily. Rimuru also responded with a serious face. This battle must not be in their village, otherwise all their efforts these days would be in vain. Steel thread entanglement activate. Rimuru spat out circles of white threads from his mouth, directly wrapping around Miss Jing, who was floating in the air with red eyes. Even though Miss Jing was emitting a high temperature that could melt iron, it could not melt these white threads. I'm sorry, Miss Jing. I can't let you destroy this place. Rimuru took Miss Jing, who was in a state of magical rampage, away from here like flying a kite. Granstar breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Jing being taken away by Rimuru. You guys leave with Ranga. Ranga will protect you. Granstar said to the three teams who were still in a daze on the ground. As soon as he finished speaking, Ranga's huge figure Quan Lichu Lai, putting the three of them on his back. He left a sentence and quickly left. Lord Granstar, I wish you good luck in battle. Seeing that there was no one around, Granstar turned his attention to the flame giant who was still wreaking havoc. It's been a long time since I've seen a monster above A rank. An A rank material actually took the initiative to come to my door. Granstar thought to himself. He began to mobilize the magic power in his body, and a blue ice magic power surged all over his body like a tide. In the blink of an eye, an elf with blue hair fluttering in the wind, a handsome face, and a slender figure appeared. What was different was that he was wearing a blue ancient-style robe, holding a long sword flashing with strange blue light in his hand, and exuding bursts of frost all over his body. This was the brand new Granstar. Without hesitation, Granstar raised one hand, and without even needing to chant a spell, he lit up a blue magic circle under the flame giant's feet. Ice prison. As Granstar let out a soft shout, the magic circle instantly activated. Here, let me add some settings to the Mengwang world. Human magicians rely on magic control to condense magic, and need to chant fixed spells to gather the surrounding magic elements. But monsters are different. Their strength completely depends on the amount of magic power in their bodies and powerful skills. Moreover, monsters directly consume the magic power in their bodies to release magic skills, so they do not need to chant. Roar. The flame giant felt the threat and let out an angry roar. The sound seemed to come from the depths of hell, deafening. Just stay where you are obediently. A sneer appeared on the corner of Gul'danstar's mouth. Immediately afterwards, ice spears several meters thick quickly condensed in the air, stabbing towards the flame giant's body like raindrops. Each ice spear contained a bone-chilling chill. Once it hit, it would definitely inflict heavy damage on the enemy. A large amount of water vapor gurgled out, like a boiling pot, firmly nailing the flame giant's limbs to the magic circle. No matter how it struggled, it could not escape the restraint. Roar! The flame giant let out an angry roar, obviously completely enraged. It opened its bloody mouth, and a scorching pillar of lava spewed out like a fire dragon, shooting straight towards the direction where Gul'danstar was. The corner of Gul'danstar's mouth raised slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. Faced with such a fierce attack, he didn't dodge or evade, and directly activated a skill. Frost Breath. With a soft shout, a magic circle flashing with cold light quickly lit up in front of Gul'danstar. Immediately afterwards, an extremely cold frost shock roared out, colliding head-on with the scorching pillar of lava. For a time, only a boom, sizzle sound was heard all around, and two completely opposite forces intertwined together, forming a spectacular scene. The originally hot air instantly became cold, and the surrounding area seemed to have turned into a misty country. However, at the same time, the temperature tilted towards the cold side. HMPH. Idiot. A cold snort sounded. The white frost torrent, like a raging wave, quickly submerged the lava spewed out by the flame giant with terrifying magic power. They rushed towards the flame giant mercilessly, and everything they passed was frozen into ice. A humanized look of horror appeared in the flame giant's eyes, and its originally ferocious and terrifying giant mouth was now sealed by thick ice, and it could no longer make a sound. Even the lava on its body seemed to be about to go out, turning into black, shiny rocks. It seems that my ice restrains all opposite elements. A pensive look flashed in Gul'danstar's eyes, and he muttered this sentence to himself. This rock giant originally had the strength of A rank. As a summon, it possessed considerable magic power even among monsters. But I didn't expect to encounter Gul'danstar, this monster. Not only was it completely restrained by the domineering ice attribute, but even in terms of magic power, they didn't seem to be on the same level. Gul'danstar looked at the flame giant who was unable to move and was seriously injured, and faintly retracted his gaze. It's time to end it. So Gul'danstar slowly drew out the ice demon longsword in his hand. As soon as the Yaoyi blue blade appeared, the surrounding water vapor turned into ice chips and fell to the ground. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.